Chapter 516. Every time he killed a super-evolved general corpse, he would only get 1 million evolution points. However, he would get as many as 100 million kill points. It was obvious that the kill points system was broken, but the system refused to admit it. However, it was fine as long as it was beneficial to embark. He had already killed more than 500 super-evolved general corpses. However, super-evolved general corpses were not easy to find. Basically, each city only had one super-evolved general corpse. Embark killed more than 20 cities' general corpses every day and only got 2 billion kill points. It seemed that he was still far from reaching 1 trillion kill points. However, embark had no other choice. If he stayed on the flaming continent, he could only slowly increase his strength by killing super-evolved general corpses. As for going to the 10,000 Dragon Realm, embark had not considered it yet. After all, it was too dangerous to go to the 10,000 Dragon Realm alone. Before his strength reached a certain level, embark would not go there casually. On this day, embark came to another city. This was a super large city. Before the apocalypse, it should have been one of the top 3 cities on the flaming continent. In this super large city, the population alone had reached more than 10 million. In other words, there should be more than 10 million general corpses gathered here. Embark used his dragon's will to scan the city. He could not help but be shocked. The general corpses in this city were all evolved general corpses. There was not even a normal general corpse. Evolved general corpses were more than 10 times more agile than normal general corpses. In terms of combat strength, they were also more than 10 times stronger than normal general corpses. There were more than 10 million general corpses in this city, which was equivalent to more than 10 million desolate hunters. What kind of terrifying force was this? Any force before the apocalypse, whether it was the ancient flaming sect or the dragon race, was nothing in front of this city's general corpses. If this force worked together, they could sweep through the entire flaming continent. If the humans who were already in despair knew of the existence of such a force, who knew how much despair they would feel? When embark saw this, he smiled faintly and continued to walk forward. After all, with his current strength, this force was nothing but a fart in front of him. However, these evolved general corpses weren't the strongest forces in the city. In this city, other than these evolved general corpses, there were over 1,000 super-evolved general corpses. This surprised embark. In the past, most of the cities only had one general corpse. At most, there were 2 of them. There were thousands of general corpses in this city. He really didn't expect this. However, having more super-evolved general corpses was a good thing. In the eyes of others, there were more than 1,000 super-evolved general corpses. In his eyes, this was more than 100 billion kill points. As for the evolved general corpses, he had no intention of killing them. Since these general corpses could evolve so quickly, they might be able to evolve into super-evolved general corpses soon. At that time, it would be another large amount of killing points. At this moment, the general corpses below also discovered embark's presence. They raised their heads and roared, making threatening noises towards embark in the sky. Roar! Roar, roar, roar. Embark paid no attention to this. He slowly descended. When the general corpses saw embark descend, they immediately became excited. They all gathered on the ground beneath embark. Very soon, the intersection was densely packed with evolved general corpses. If one looked down from the sky, they would discover that the wide intersection was completely occupied by black and gray. Embark was more than 500 meters in the air and took out the dragon salyer. Energy poured into the dragon salyer from his arm. She lightly drew a cross at the intersection below her. In the next moment, the intersection suddenly collapsed. Boom, boom. With 2 consecutive sounds, everything at the intersection turned into nothingness in an instant. Only 2 huge, long ravines were left. These 2 ravines were like huge cross-shaped scars on the ground. It was a ghastly sight. With these 2 slashes, embark had instantly killed more than 10,000 evolved general corpses, which was equivalent to instantly killing more than 10,000 hunters. What kind of terrifying strength was that? Perhaps this was the power of the dragon salyer. However, no matter how strong the dragon salure was, it still needed to absorb energy. If it wasn't for embark's strength, before it could even be used, its energy would have been sucked dry by the blade. At this moment, embark continued to slowly descend from the sky. As for the general corpses outside the intersection that could not squeeze in before, although there was a huge space now, they did not dare to squeeze in at all. Their intelligence was even higher than that of normal humans. Seeing the terrifying strength of the human in the sky, they naturally could not continue to rush over to their deaths. On the contrary, when embark landed, more than 20 giant general corpses that were more than 500 meters tall surrounded embark from all directions. "Human, you've pissed us off." One of the corpse generals let out a sound that sounded like a tree branch being broken. Embark sneered and looked around at the general corpses. Some were like Michelin spokesmen. Some were as thin as 4 chopsticks picking up a piece of tofu. There were also those that were neither fat nor thin, but were covered in muscles. Of course, there were also female general corpses. These giant general corpses that were more than 300 meters tall were all naked. Embark felt nauseous when he saw this. Each of these super-evolved general corpses had strength comparable to a grand desolate master. They looked at the tiny human that was surrounded by them with anger and disdain in their eyes. Embark swept his gaze around and slowly shook his head. "So what if I've pissed you off?" The female general corpse sneered. "If you piss us off, there's only one outcome, death." Embark shook his head. "That depends on whether you have the ability." When the female general corpse heard this, she raised her right foot high. "I'll trample you to death, you ant." As she spoke, she stomped down on embark. Embark shook his head again. These general corpses really did not grow up. They still played this game. The first time embark saw a general corpse play this game, it took him dozens of seconds to kill the general corpse. He wanted to see what tricks the general corpses had. Now that he knew the tricks of these general corpses, he naturally did not waste time. Just now, he seemed to be dragging the dragon salure in his hand, but in fact, he had been pouring energy into the dragon salure. At this moment, he watched as the general corpse's foot stepped down. He only waved the dragon's salure gently in his right hand. It was as if nothing had happened. However, in the next moment, the upper and lower bodies of the 20 general corpses around him were all separated. All the super-evolved general corpses widened their eyes. They looked at their rapidly separated bodies in disbelief. Chapter 517. All the super-evolved general corpses were somewhat surprised. This was only the beginning, and it was already over. They hadn't even used their ultimate move. Not to mention their ultimate move, they hadn't even finished probing, and it was already over. How could this human be so strong? One had to know that in their understanding, humans were a group of insignificant creatures. Even the great desolate masters among humans seemed to have similar combat strength as them on the surface. But in reality, in front of their almost unkillable attribute, no matter how strong a human was, they would eventually be exhausted to death. But this human had cut them all into two with just one slash. Most importantly, their self-healing ability was completely useless in front of this human. In the past, even if their heads were twisted off, they wouldn't feel the aura of death at all. But today, after their bodies were cut in half, they could clearly feel that death was getting closer and closer to them. The footsteps of the Grim Reaper became louder and louder. In the end, all 20 super-evolved general corpses died. Their bodies had completely lost their vitality. And those super-evolved general corpses who were watching the show not far away all had a drastic change in expression. Other than that, there were no other living humans in this city. They all felt a little bored. It wasn't easy for a living human to appear, and they were like a group of cats encountering a mouse. They all wanted to play with this mouse. But they never thought that this mouse would be so strong. He killed 20 cats in one move. This wasn't F***king fun anymore. Thus, the corpse generals stealthily pulled their bodies back behind the buildings and hid. Of course, there were also some general corpses who didn't believe it. They still hadn't used their ultimate moves. And they still had an ultimate move that they hadn't used. How could they escape so easily? Therefore, these super-evolved general corpses were all holding back their ultimate moves. Whoever this human found, their ultimate move would be arranged for him. Emosure had plundered the memories of a few super-evolved general corpses, although he couldn't see the past from their memories. However, Emosure was still able to see the short-term memories. From the memories of these super-evolved general corpses, Emosure knew that they were holding back their ultimate move. He could easily resolve the ultimate move of a super-evolved general corpse with the dragon Salyer. However, there were over 1,000 super-evolved general corpses. Even if the dragon Salyer sucked all the energy in his body dry, it was still far from being able to exterminate all the thousands of corpses. Emosure wouldn't be able to kill all of them in one strike unless they obediently sat in a row and ate fruits. Therefore, Emosure put away the dragon-slaughtering saber. After setting up a virtual sentry tower outside, he entered the dragon cave to cultivate Longwei. Ever since he was able to control everything in the miniature world at will, he had already placed the dragon cave inside. Lying in the dragon cave, Emosure completely relaxed his mind and began to rest. Meanwhile, in the outside world, the super-evolved corpse generals had already prepared their ultimate moves. They were just waiting for Emosure to find them so that they could be released. However, after a full 10 minutes, there was no movement at all. Surprised, they all poked their heads out and looked at where the human was just now. But when they looked, they were surprised to find that the man was not in his original position. This caused them to panic a little. If that guy were to fight them head-on, they could use the ultimate move that they had long prepared to destroy that guy. However, if that guy were to launch a sneak attack from behind, it would be difficult for them to guard against it. While they were surprised, they all walked out from behind the buildings and looked around for Emosure. However, Emosure had hidden in his own miniature space. With their strength, it was impossible for them to discover him. Therefore, these guys held back their ultimate moves for more than half an hour. After more than half an hour, they were sure that the guy had left. Only then did they heave a sigh of relief. Emosure was also tired. He slept for 12 hours. 12 hours later, he opened his eyes. With a thought from the dragon, he connected to the virtual sentry tower outside. After detecting those general corpses, they had already let down their guard. He checked the position of each of the commander corpses several times. In his mind, he roughly thought of a few routes. He wanted to kill a few more super-evolved general corpses with every slash. Then, he took out the dragon Salyer and poured 1/5 of the energy in his body into the dragon Salyer. With his current strength, he could swing the sword 5 times in a row. After 5 times, the energy in his body would be exhausted. After pouring in, Emosure's mind moved, and he disappeared from the dragon cave. When he reappeared, he was already behind a building. On the other side of the building, a general corpse was sitting on the ground, concentrating on picking the soil between its nails. The moment Emosure appeared, the dragon Salyer in his hand slashed at the general corpse across the entire building. Rumble! The building in front of him was suddenly cut open, creating a huge crack that was more than 50 meters wide. At the same time, on the other side of the building, the general corpse that was picking its feet was instantly cut in half. Even until its death, it did not know how it died. At the same time, a huge gully was cut open on the ground. This huge gully was more than 50 meters wide and 5 kilometers long. And within this 5 kilometers, there were 5 huge general corpses. Whoosh, 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 whoosh. These 5 huge general corpses were also cut in half. This unforeseen event happened so suddenly that all the general corpses heard the commotion and looked over. They only saw the 5 huge general corpses fall to the ground one after another. Blood flowed like a stream and quickly gathered into a pool of blood on the ground. All the super-evolved general corpses reacted. "Oh no, that despicable human is still here." As they spoke, all the general corpses looked around. However, they could not see Emosure at all. At this moment, Emosure had already teleported to a dilapidated building. He hid in the dark and poured energy into the dragon Salyer. At the same time, when the general corpses realized that Emosure had appeared again, they began to accumulate energy and prepare for their big moves. The General Corps's big moves were extremely powerful. They could destroy an entire city in one move. However, the disadvantage was that it took too long to accumulate energy. Emosure took advantage of the fact that they had not fully accumulated energy and slashed out 3 more times. He killed 7 General Corpses. Then, he hid in the miniature world again. Those General Corpses had already accumulated energy and were waiting for Emosure to appear. However, Emosure seemed to have evaporated into thin air and disappeared again. No matter how they turned the city upside down, they could not find that human. This made these super-evolved General Corpses angry and panicked. Chapter 5:18. The super-evolved General Corpses were terrified and furious when they could not find Emosure. 2 hours later, they finally let their guard down completely. However, Emosure appeared again at that moment. He swung his sword a few more times. This time, he chose a better spot. There were basically super-evolved General Corpses around him. He killed over 30 super-evolved General Corpses in one round. After 3 slashes, up to 100 super-evolved General Corpses were killed. The super-evolved General Corpses were shocked, panicked, and furious. To them, humans were an extremely weak race. They had always been the ones toying with humans. When had they ever been toyed with by a mere human? Among the super-evolved General Corpses, there was a General Corpse that was only over 200 meters tall. He looked smaller and thinner than the other General Corpses, but he was actually the leader of these super-evolved General Corpses. He had noticed that the humans seemed to be hunting them, the super-evolved General Corpses. He immediately called one of the super-evolved General Corpses next to him and roared at him a few times. The super-evolved General roared a few times in response. It then turned around and walked deep into the city. At the moment, Emosure was lying on a soft bed floating above the lake in Micro-World. He was enjoying the sun. Naturally, he had already detected that the super-evolved General was walking deep into the city through the virtual guard tower. He immediately followed the super-evolved General Corpses with dragon telekinesis. A moment later, the super-evolved General Corpses entered a crater with a diameter of over 500 meters deep in the city. Craters like this were very common in various cities. These were basically craters created by all sorts of corpse-destroying bombs that exploded underground when General Corpses attacked the city. General Corpses were creatures that could burrow under the surface. The corpse-destroying bombs could burrow underground for hundreds or even thousands of meters, causing devastating damage to the General Corpses' nests. Therefore, Emosure had not carefully investigated these craters before. As the General Corpses entered the crater, Emosure's dragon telekinesis followed. He saw that the crater was very deep and led underground. When he looked down carefully, he was shocked to find that the crater's depth was so deep. His dragon telekinesis had been following the super-evolved General Corpses until they were 10 kilometers underground. At the moment, his dragon telekinesis could not reach down. What's so strange about this huge pit? Emosure muttered to himself. However, no matter how strange it was, he had to do it first. With that thought in mind, Emosure left Miniature World and returned to the city to hunt down the super-evolved General Corpses. When the super-evolved zombies reacted and were about to unleash their ultimate skills, he once again hid in his Miniature World. The cycle was so repeated that the super-evolved General Corpses were about to explode. Imagine facing such an opponent who would sneak up on you from time to time. By the time you react, you'll be hiding in your turtle shell again. Even if you have all the strength in your body, there's nowhere for you to use it. As long as it was a normal person, their mentality would explode. Not to mention these super-evolved General Corpses. However, an hour later, when Emosure had just killed over 100 corpse generals, a roar suddenly came from the huge pit. Oh, gaga gaga, roar. This roar was completely different from the roars of other super-evolved General Corpses. It was very recognizable. Furthermore, as long as one listened to it once, it would be impossible to forget it again. Emosure was slightly shocked when he heard it. His dragon mind moved and immediately probed into the pit. With that, Emosure was instantly stunned. He saw a large number of super-evolved General Corpses crawling out of the huge pit. 1, 2, 5. 100, 200, 500. And it wasn't just that pit. In the entire city, there were super-evolved general corpses crawling out of the hundreds of huge pits. The super-evolved general corpses in the city saw more and more super-evolved general corpses swarming out from all directions. They were all very excited. They kept baring their teeth and opening their mouths, letting out excited roars. Aoo, roar, roar, aoo. The super-evolved general corpses that had just crawled out of the huge pit didn't dare to roar in response to the super-evolved general corpses. Emosher was shocked. He quickly teleported and arrived at an altitude of 10,000 meters. He looked down from the sky. From this angle, the super-evolved general corpses crawling out of the huge pit looked like the huge pit was constantly spitting out these super-evolved general corpses. The vomiting didn't stop until half an hour later. At this moment, looking down from the ground, he saw that the ground was densely packed with super-evolved general corpses that were 300 meters tall. They were squeezing together, which reminded Emosher of an idiom he had learned in elementary school, shoulder to shoulder. All the super-evolved general corpses raised their heads and roared at Emosher. Emosher made a rough estimate. There were at least 8,000 super-evolved general corpses here, if not 10,000. This was equivalent to 10,000 Grand Desolate Masters. One had to know that there were at most 30 to 50 Grand Desolate Masters on the Flaming Land. Now, there were thousands or even tens of thousands. If another human saw this, they would only be able to flee in defeat. However, Emosher's eyes were sparkling at this moment. These were all kill points. At this moment, he didn't hesitate and took out a fist-sized orb. Demon Suppressing Orb. Using a Demon Suppressing Orb for kill points was worth it. On the ground, the super-evolved general corpses couldn't attack Emosher, who was 10,000 meters in the air. They all cried out hungrily. At the same time, their backs started to crack. 2 bones extended out from inside. These 2 bones quickly separated and formed bone wings. Flesh membrane gradually grew on the bone wings. Only then did Emosher understand that these fellows could actually fly. He couldn't wait any longer. Otherwise, should he wait for these guys to fly up and take care of him? He let go of his right hand. The demon suppressing orb fell rapidly. Soon, hundreds of super-evolved general corpses flew 100 meters into the air. However, at this moment, the demon suppressing orb fell. These super-evolved general corpses were instantly frozen in the air. All the super-evolved general corpses in the air seemed to have been immobilized. Only the demon-suppressing orb was falling rapidly. Soon, the demon-suppressing orb landed. In the next moment, there was a dazzling light. This dazzling light covered the entire city. Even Emosher, who was in the sky, couldn't open his eyes. However, the strange thing was that such a dazzling light didn't make any sound. After a full 5 minutes, the light gradually faded. Emosher rubbed his eyes. After his eyes adjusted to the normal brightness, he looked at the ground again. He saw that the ground was still the same ground. The city was still the same city. However, the tens of thousands of super-evolved general corpses on the city's ground had long disappeared. Not even a trace of flesh was left. It was as if they had never appeared in this city. The demon-suppressing orb's power was terrifying. Chapter 5:19. Emosher knew that the demon-suppressing orb was powerful. But he didn't expect it to be so powerful. One had to know that this demon-suppressing orb was something he obtained from signing in at the Blood Race's lair back on Earth. What level was Emosher at that time? Hunter? Or a Grand Hunter? He had already forgotten. But at that time, he had already signed in something that could destroy the super-evolved General Corpse. It could be seen how terrifying the power of the demon-suppressing orb was. Killed 10335 super-evolved General Corpse. Obtained 1,033. 5 billion kill points. Total kill points, 1123. 8 billion. You can advance. Do you want to advance immediately? In his mind, the system's voice sounded. When Emosher heard this voice, it was as if he was listening to heavenly music. He could finally advance again. Ever since he became a Grand Desolate Master, which was an evolved dragon, his advancement had been very difficult. Firstly, there weren't that many dragons for him to kill, and secondly, there weren't that many super-evolved general corpses for him to kill. He didn't expect that there would be as many as tens of thousands of super-evolved general corpses in this city. He immediately replied in his mind, "Advance." The system's voice sounded frowny-face. "This advancement will take 5 minutes. Hearing this, Emosher's figure flashed and returned to the miniature space. In the miniature space, he could fast-forward time. With a thought, 5 minutes passed in an instant. The system's notification sounded in his mind again. Frowny-face. Advancement successful. Name, Emosher. Level 3 Evolved Dragon. Level 3 Grand Desolate Master. Level 10 Long Yensher. Skills. Click to expand. At this moment, Emosher had advanced to a Level 3 Grand Desolate Master. His strength had increased by more than 10 times. Previously, when he used the dragon-slaying saber, he could only slash out 5 times in a row. But now, it was not a problem for him to slash out 50 times with the dragon-slaying saber. In this case, he didn't have to hide in the miniature world after slashing 2 or 3 times. However, now that all the general corpses in the city had been destroyed, the tens of thousands of general corpses hidden under the city had also been destroyed. Where could he find the tens of thousands of general corpses? Why don't we go underground again to investigate? As soon as this thought appeared, Emosher couldn't help but feel curious. What exactly was it like underground? These general corpses were all 300 meters tall. More than 10,300 meters tall general corpses came from underground. Presumably, the underground must be very big. Perhaps it was because of the devil dragon genes in his body. These thoughts kept surfacing in his mind, urging him to find out what was going on. Emosher pondered for a moment and finally made up his mind. Let's go and take a look. Thus, he once again came to the outside world. With a thought, Zhang Xian formed 100 clones. The 100 doppelgangers jumped into the 100 huge pits in the city. These doppelgangers were connected to his consciousness. No matter which doppelganger encountered a situation, he would know instantly. These clones continued to head underground. In the first 5 kilometers, he could clearly feel everything that his clones felt. However, after 5 kilometers, his perception became a little blurry. After 10 kilometers, he could no longer sense the existence of these clones. Emosher shook his head. It seemed that using a clone to investigate was not as practical as doing it himself. He no longer hesitated. With a leap, he jumped into a deep hole. The first 10 kilometers had already been scouted by his doppelganger, so he walked very quickly. Not long after, he arrived at 10 kilometers underground. At this point, it was pitch black all around. Of course, with Emosher's strength, he could already see things in the dark. Coupled with the probing of his dragon will, no matter how dark the environment was, it did not affect him at all. He continued to probe deeper into the cave with his dragon will. In his probing, he could still go down for another 10 kilometers. F***ck, what a deep hole. Emosher cursed in his mind as he continued to walk down. The cave was at a 45-degree angle and extended all the way down. After walking for another 20 kilometers, a faint red light began to appear in front of him. At first, Emosher thought that it should be the light from underground magma. After all, the vertical distance from here to the ground was more than 20 kilometers long. Based on the thickness of the flaming land stratum, there should be magma occasionally coming out. However, he soon realized that he was wrong. There was no magma here. At the end of the cave ahead was a cave entrance. His dragon will could not detect what was outside the cave entrance. It seemed that the cave entrance had some kind of barrier that prevented his dragon will from probing outside. He continued to walk forward. Soon he arrived at the cave entrance. At this moment, looking at the situation outside the cave entrance, he was a little stunned. The cave entrance was above a cliff. Looking out from the cave entrance, he could see a large grassland and a winding river outside. The sun shone on the river, making it look like a shining jade belt. Further away, there was a large forest. Further away, there was an undulating snowy mountain. Emosher was a little confused. Hadn't they been going down before? Why did they come out again? At this moment, he could see that there were countless huge footprints on the grassland. They should have been stepped out by the tens of thousands of super-evolved general corpses. Emosure used his dragon will to probe outside. He probed 500 kilometers. He found that there were 3 groups of super-evolved general corpses within 500 kilometers. There were about 100 of them in each group. Emosure was overjoyed. No matter where this place was, killing points was the most important thing. Therefore, with a thought, he disappeared instantly. At the same time, 300 kilometers away, more than 100 super-evolved general corpses were gathered together. Half of these super-evolved general corpses were more than 300 meters tall. The other half were only 100 to 200 meters tall. And from their faces, these super-evolved general corpses should be the children of the super-evolved general corpses. The adult super-evolved general corpses were tearing apart the corpse of a giant beast. This giant beast was 500 to 600 meters long, and the surface of its body was covered with a thick layer of hard armor. But it was forcefully pulled by the super-evolved general corpses. Hiss! The hard armor was forcefully torn off. The scene was a tragic sight. The children of the zombie corpses next to them roared excitedly. Gagagagaga! A super-evolved general corpse tore off a piece of meat that was 10 cubic meters in size and handed it to a zombie child next to it. The corpse child grabbed the meat and began to chew on it like a wild beast. The other zombie children were about to cry from their greed as they kept swallowing their saliva. Loud gurgling sounds came from their throats. But none of the children dared to snatch the meat from the hands of the previous child. In just a moment, this giant beast was torn into hundreds of pieces and divided into the hands of all the general corpses. All the general corpses were like wild beasts as they began to tear the meat in their hands. It was also at this moment that a figure quietly appeared in the sky. In his right hand he held a 2-meter-long, lusterless, ordinary pig-slaughtering knife. Chapter 520. While the general corpses were eating the giant beast's corpse, a figure quietly appeared in the sky. He was dressed in black and looked ordinary. In his right hand was a 2-meter-long saber. The saber did not have any luster, and its style was ordinary. It looked like a butcher's knife on earth. Those super-evolved general corpses were tearing at the meat in their hands. The smell of blood covered the smell of Emosure's arrival. As a result, these super-evolved general corpses did not notice Emosure's appearance at all. Emosure raised the dragon-slaying saber in his right hand. Emosure first plundered the memories of a few super-evolved general corpses. Among them, the memories of one of the super-evolved general corpses were much clearer than the other super-evolved general corpses. From the memories of this super-evolved general corpse, Emosure discovered a shocking fact. This place was actually a general corpse world. All the general corpses in this world were super-evolved general corpses. In this world, there were hundreds of millions of super-evolved general corpses. On the surface, the flaming land looked like a planet. In fact, deep underground, it was connected to the general corpse world. Previously, the general corpses had discovered this and released their general corpse virus on the flaming land. In their plan, the flaming land would soon be filled with general corpses. After all the humans on the flaming land had become general corpses, these super-evolved general corpses would be able to order the general corpses on Earth to do many things. For example, building houses, mining, quarrying, and so on. After discovering this fact, Emosure was somewhat speechless. Previously, discovering the 10,000 dragon realm was enough to give him a headache. Now, a general corpse world had appeared. However, in comparison, the general corpse world was much less dangerous than the 10,000 dragon realm. Moreover, the appearance of this general corpse world provided Emosure with an excellent way to obtain kill points. At this moment, Emosure raised the dragon-slaying saber in his right hand. He swung it at the general corpse tribe on the ground. There was no sound, no light, no sound. On the ground, a huge ravine that was more than 500 meters wide and 5 kilometers long instantly appeared. Those super-evolved general corpses instantly disappeared. What replaced them was the blood water that was several meters deep in the huge ravine. At the same time, a system notification appeared in Emoshur's mind. Frowny face. 105 super-evolved general corpses killed. 10, 5 billion kill points gained. 1/ was equivalent to 10, 5 billion kill points. According to the system notification, if he wanted to evolve into a Tier 4 dragon, he would need to obtain 10 trillion kill points. However, Emoshur had plenty of time. After exterminating the corpse general tribe, Emoshur had a thought. In the blink of an eye, they arrived at the second corpse general tribe. This corpse general tribe had over 200 super-evolved corpse generals. With a single slash, Emoshur annihilated all 200 super-evolved corpses. The third general tribe had over 100 super-evolved general corpses. Emoshur still only used one strike. Speaking of which, after reaching the third stage, the power of the Dragon Salyer had also increased by a lot. With one slash, he could kill 200 to 300 super-evolved general corpses. Within a radius of 1,000 kilometers, there were many corpse general tribes. Emoshur swung his saber 50 times. With every slash, a corpse general tribe would be destroyed. The 50 slashes allowed him to gain more than 500 billion kill points. At this time, the energy in his body was almost depleted. He returned to the miniature world. Previously, when he returned to the miniature world, he would wait for his energy to recover before coming out. But now, Emoshur had realized that in this world, he actually had many ways to quickly recover his energy. The most typical one was that he could recover his energy with just a thought. Or he could fast-forward time. Originally, it was 2 days, but now he could fast-forward it to 1 second. This way, he could quickly recover his energy. However, Emoshur had always been waiting for time to recover his energy, so he had formed a mindset, so he did not think of it before. At this moment, with a thought, the energy in his body instantly reached its peak. Thus, he once again came to the corpse general world. The corpse general world was extremely large and was simply divided into north, south, east, and west. At this time, Emoshur was in the eastern continent. And this eastern continent could be simply divided into mountains, plains, forests, deserts, glaciers, and oceans. Emoshur was currently in the plains. According to what he knew, there were over 10,000 corpse general tribes in the plains. This made Emoshur secretly happy. As long as he destroyed these 10,000 corpse general tribes, he should be able to level up again. Previously, he was still surprised by the sudden appearance of the corpse general world. Now, he understood that this corpse general world was here to give him kill points. Next, Emoshur continued to slaughter these corpse general tribes. Every time he slashed 50 times, he would obtain about 500 billion kill points. When his energy was depleted, he would return to the miniature world to quickly recover. Then he would come out again to slaughter the corpse general tribes. In this way, in just 1 day, Emoshur's kill points had reached 5 trillion. On the second day, the 10,000 corpse general tribes in the plains had really been slaughtered by him. At this moment, the system's notification sounded in his mind again. He could level up again. After returning to the miniature world, Emoshur leveled up again. His level had already reached the level of a rank 4 evolved dragon, which was also a level 4 Grand Desolate Master. Next, if he wanted to level up again, he would need 100 trillion kill points. Looking at this number, Emoshur felt a little worried for the system. The kill points system was already a little broken. If this continued, wouldn't it collapse even more? At this moment, the system's voice sounded frowny face. After reaching the level of a rank 5 evolved dragon, the miniature world will automatically level up by 1. The system's words made Emoshur feel a little excited. The miniature world's current size had already reached 10 million square kilometers, which was slightly bigger than Huaxia on Earth. If it continued to level up, how big would it be? This filled him with anticipation. He came to the corpse general world. With a teleport, he arrived in the forest. The forest here was not divided into many areas like the forests on Earth. There were Amazon jungle, Burmese jungle, and so on. The forests of the eastern continent were connected into an extremely huge area. In this huge forest, there were many tribes. And because the forest was rich in resources, Not only were there many tribes in the forest, but they were also much bigger. Usually, a small tribe would have 300 people. A bigger tribe would even have 800 to 1,000 people. Of course, this was a good thing for Emosher. At this moment, he was teleporting forward while checking all the movements within a radius of 1,000 kilometers. Soon, he found a tribe of 500 people. At this moment, the tribe was in the middle of a hunting activity. The 500 people went out together and chased a group of giant beasts to the lakeside in the forest. These giant beasts did not know how to swim, so they were surrounded by the corpse general tribes in a fan shape. Chapter 521. This tribe of 500 people was surrounding dozens of giant beasts that were 300 to 500 meters long by the lakeside. At this moment, Emosher's figure quietly appeared 1,000 meters above these people. After appearing, Emosher used the stealth camouflage skill. He blended his figure into the background of the blue sky. The super-evolved zombies on the ground did not know Emosher had appeared. Emosher raised the ordinary-looking butcher's knife in his right hand. He waved it lightly at the ground. The next moment, a 10-kilometer-long and 300 meters wide gully appeared by the lakeside. All the super-evolved zombies, including the giant beasts, were turned into a bloody pulp. In this huge gully, there was a layer of blood that was about half a meter deep. At the same time, the gully connected to the lake. The lake water immediately poured into the gully. However, the gully that Emosher had drawn was too big and too deep. Even after all the lake water had poured into the gully was still not filled. After Emosher had leveled up, the power of his knife was terrifying. A system notification appeared in his mind. Killed 522 super-evolved zombies. 53 super-evolved zombies. Obtained 5 billion kill points. Obtaining 5 billion kill points with a single slash was a pleasant surprise to Emosher. Furthermore, killing a super-evolved general zombie beast would grant the same benefits as killing a super-evolved general zombie beast. This made Emosher very happy. After all, there were more zombies than super-evolved zombies in the forest. Among them, there were more super-evolved zombie beasts than super-evolved zombie beasts. This was definitely good news for Emosher. Next, he would not only hunt down the super-evolved zombie generals, but also the super-evolved zombie beasts. In the beginning, this matter did not attract much attention. After all, it was normal for 1 or 2 tribes living in the forest to be wiped out. It would not attract the super-evolved zombies' attention at all. However, on the second day, they noticed that something was not right. This was because in just one day 8 tribes were wiped out. This was definitely not normal. In addition, huge gullies were constantly appearing on the ground. Each gully was several kilometers long and 300 to 500 meters wide. This was definitely not something an ordinary super-evolved zombie beast could do. In the depths of the forest, between 2 mountains. The mountain was about 10 kilometers tall and stretched for hundreds of kilometers. The entire mountainside had been hollowed out. Although the super-evolved zombies were not on good terms with each other, if something important happened, all the leaders of the tribes would gather here for a discussion. Among these tribal chiefs, there was one who was slightly older but looked stronger than the other tribal chiefs. He was the leader of all the evolved mutated corpse generals in the forest. All of the general corpses had to call him head corpse. As for the conflicts between the tribes, he would not care about them. After all, this was part of the law of nature. But now, a large number of tribes were being massacred, and a large number of super-evolved zombie generals and super-evolved zombie beasts were being hunted and slaughtered. At this moment, he looked at the leader of the 10,000 super-evolved zombies in the cave. He kept roaring in his throat. If a human heard him, they would think that he was a wild beast roaring in a frenzy. But that was actually the language of the general corpses. One of the tribal chiefs said, "Another tribe has been wiped out. We must find out who did this. There's no need to investigate. A youth from our tribe saw that guy from afar." As soon as he said this, the rest of the tribe leaders all looked over at him. "Who did this? Tell us. Tell us, I want to tear that guy into pieces." The tribal chiefs all bared their fangs and spoke aggressively. The tribal chief said, "I saw that guy appear in the sky with my own eyes." With a swing of his blade, he slaughtered the entire tribe below. What surprised me the most was that he was a human. As soon as these words were spoken, the entire huge cave suddenly fell silent. The sound of falling leaves could be heard. After a short while, a tribal chief questioned, "How is this possible? How can a lowly and insignificant creature like a human possess such great strength? Moreover, the general corpses are unkillable. How did he kill so many super-evolved zombies?" The tribal chief shook his head and replied, "I don't know the specifics. I'm not too sure about the specifics. In short, what I said is what I saw. As for why he was able to kill the super-evolved zombies that were originally unkillable, I think it has something to do with the blade in his hand." When the other tribal chiefs heard that, they all shook their heads. "Nonsense. That's impossible. Over the years, we've captured many humans for experiments. In the end, it proved that no matter how advanced the weapons used by humans are, they can't kill us general corpses. That's right. The super-evolved zombies are unkillable. Even if they are killed, they can only be killed by the other super-evolved zombies or zombie beasts of our world. How could they be killed by the inferior creatures of that inferior world? You're just spouting nonsense." When the tribal chief saw that he couldn't get through, he could only shake his head and stop talking. He knew that if he said those words, he would be mocked and questioned by the other tribal chiefs. That was why he didn't say anything for an entire day. Later, he heard that 8 tribes had been wiped out in one day yesterday. Only then did he feel that he had to stand up and say something. In the end, after he said that, he was immediately questioned by the other tribal chiefs. However, he didn't care. After all, he had already guessed that would be the result. That was all the information he could provide to the tribal leaders. It was best if they believed him. If they didn't, they would be slaughtered by that inferior creature. At that moment, the corpse finally spoke. "Shut up, all of you." As soon as he said this, the previously noisy and huge cave immediately quieted down. The corpse glanced at the 10,000 super-evolved zombies. Finally he spoke. "No matter if what he said is true or not, we have to treat it seriously. I've decided to immediately send out a team of zombies to investigate the forest. At the same time, we need a specialized hunting team. If what he said is true, then our hunting team can target that inferior human and make corresponding arrangements." When he said that, the other tribal chiefs naturally had no objections. Therefore, in the afternoon of that day, a team of about 200 general corpses set off in Emosher's direction. Chapter 522. This morning, Emosher massacred another tribe. He gained more than 40 billion kill points. Compared to before, this was much faster. However, Emosher did a rough calculation. If he massacred 8 tribes in a day and gained 50 billion kill points from each tribe, that would be 400 billion kill points a day. And to advance to rank 5, he would need 100 trillion kill points. In other words, he estimated that he would need more than 200 days to advance to rank 5. Although this was already very fast compared to other Grand Desolate Masters. However, Emosher felt that this was still not fast enough. He had to increase his strength to a sufficient level before the giant dragons arrived at the Flaming Land again. When those proud and arrogant dragons arrived at the Flaming Land, they would exclaim, "Damn, how can there be such a strong existence on the Flaming Land?" It seemed that he had to work a little harder. He had to at least increase his kill points to 500 billion kill points a day. Next, Emosher began to madly rush on his way and kill. In the end, the results were gratifying. He had gained 700 billion kill points. It was far beyond his expectations. This was because not only did he kill those tribes, but he also encountered a large group of super-evolved general snakes. In this group, there were more than 2,000 super-evolved general snake. This made Emosher's gains far exceed his expectations. He thought that if he encountered an even larger group of general beasts, it would definitely be great news for him. Just like this, on the 3rd and 4th day, Emosher could gain 500 billion kill points a day. At this time, his kill points had reached close to 3 trillion. On this day, embark had just massacred another tribe of general beasts. Suddenly, an urgent alarm sounded in his mind. Beep, beep, beep. Virtual sentry towers had been set up at the places he had passed by. These alarms were from the virtual sentry towers. He immediately connected his dragon consciousness to the virtual sentry towers. He saw that within the range of the virtual sentry towers, there were more than 20 super-evolved general corpses that were following his footsteps. When embark saw so many super-evolved general corpses, he was not afraid at all. Instead, he was secretly delighted. His initial estimate was that there should be about 100,000 super-evolved general corpses. He had worked hard for 4 days and only managed to get 3 trillion kill points. Once these super-Yi gathered the corpses, they would be able to get 10 trillion in an instant. These guys were just here to give him gifts. Therefore, he deliberately slowed down and waited for the super-evolved zombies to catch up. In the afternoon, when the red clouds filled the sky, the super-evolved zombies finally caught up. They were very smart. They chose different directions and formed a huge encirclement. Then he slowly drew attention to this encirclement. This encirclement was not only on the ground, but also in the air. In the air, there were tens of thousands of flying super-evolved beasts. These flying super-evolved beasts were trained after subduing the zombies. They were obedient to their master's orders. All of the corpse generals saw the human who had just slaughtered a tribe of 600 people. The shock in their hearts could not be any greater. Even though he knew that it was a human who had slaughtered so many super-evolved zombies, he was still shocked. But when she saw him standing in front of her, she was still shocked. It was like a human hearing that an ant had massacred dozens of villages. Although he knew it a long time ago, when the ant stood in front of him, the shock and fear in his heart could not be any greater. These 100,000 corpse generals, together with more than 10,000 corpse generals, surrounded embark. And this time, they had learned their lesson. They did not waste any more words with embark. They did not wait until they could not defeat him before using their ultimate move. Instead, they had long prepared their ultimate move and used it on embark right away. Therefore, all the super-evolved zombies had dozens of thick sanguisurincus growing on their feet. Among the 100,000 super-evolved zombies, millions of sanguisurincus that were as thick as giant pythons surged toward embark from all directions. In the air, the corpse general beasts also used their ultimate moves. The bones in their bodies kept cracking. Their bodies began to morph. Embark shook his head slightly. He did not wait for these guys to finish using their ultimate moves. The pig slaughtering knife in his right hand disappeared. In its place was a fist-sized bead. At first glance, one would feel that this pearl was sparkling and translucent. There were no impurities at all. But if one felt it carefully, they would feel that it contained an extremely terrifying energy. This energy seemed to have the power to destroy heaven and earth. The next moment, he flipped his right hand. Then, the bead fell down to the ground. In the process of the bead falling, time seemed to have stopped, and the scene seemed to have frozen. Those ferocious corpse general beasts that were about to pounce on embark in the air were now quietly frozen in the air, not moving at all. Those python-like sanguisurincus that were about to pounce on embark also stopped in an instant. They did not move at all. In the entire scene, there was only one bead that was slowly falling. A moment later, this demon-suppressing bead landed. At this moment, there was a dazzling brilliance. The entire world was swallowed by this dazzling light. But strangely, there was no sound in such a dazzling light. It was as if a mute button had been pressed. After a full 5 minutes, this dazzling light slowly disappeared. Heaven and earth, trees, and everything around slowly appeared again. At this moment, all the super-evolved corpse general beasts in the sky had disappeared. The sky was extremely clear. In the blue sky, an old bird flew past. A beautiful world. On the ground, the millions of python-like sanguisurincus that were about to surge towards embark had completely disappeared. The 100,000 super-evolved corpse general beasts had also completely disappeared. It was as if they had never existed. At the same time, a system notification appeared in Emosher's mind. Frowny face killed 111,203 super-evolved corpse general beasts. Obtained 110,1203 million kill points. Emosher looked at this and nodded in satisfaction. With just one attack, he had obtained so many kill points. If he did it a few more times, wouldn't he be able to level up in minutes? However, this was only an ideal situation. This time, he had destroyed so many corpse general beasts. Next, these corpse general beasts would either send stronger existences to cause trouble for him, or they would hide and not meet him. But they would definitely not send such a large number of super-evolved corpse general beasts to surround and kill him, because they were not stupid. They knew that sending so many super-evolved corpse general beasts was just sending them to their deaths. If he continued to hunt super-evolved corpse general beasts here, the speed would not be as fast. But now, he had already obtained 1/10 of the kill points. Was the remaining 9/10 still far away? Chapter 523. Over the next few days, things developed as Emosher expected. Those super-evolved corpse generals no longer came to cause trouble for him. Instead, they all went into hiding. At least on the surface, Emosher could no longer detect any super-evolved corpse generals. Since he couldn't find any super-evolved corpse generals, he could only go kill those corpse generals. At the same time, in a huge cave at the foot of the mountain, the corpse head was sitting on a high stone platform. Below him, there were more than 50 tribal leaders. Compared to the tens of thousands of tribal leaders a few days ago, the current situation could only be described as bleak. The tribal leaders had gloomy expressions. The corpse generals below didn't dare to say anything. After a long while, the corpse head spoke. "Do any of you have any ideas?" The 50 tribal leaders remained silent. The corpse head snorted. "Normally, you all act like a tyrant in your own tribes, but now that there's an enemy invading, you're all out of ideas. What kind of fucking tribal leader are you?" The tribal leaders all secretly complained in their hearts. "Normally, you act like a tyrant in front of us, but now that there's an enemy invading, you're also out of ideas? Then what's the use of having a corpse like you?" Of course, these were only the tribal leaders' thoughts. They naturally couldn't express it on the surface. The corpse head looked at the tribal leaders. They all looked at each other. This made him even angrier. If you still can't think of a solution, then don't be a tribal leader. When the corpse generals heard this, their expressions all changed. What did it mean if a corpse general leader was removed from his position midway? It meant that the tribal leaders might very well send them to Thousand Poisons Ridge. That was equivalent to giving them a death sentence. The corpse general leaders all looked at each other. They all saw the fear in each other's eyes. At this moment, a corpse general leader suddenly had an idea and said, "Corpse head, I have an idea." The other tribal leaders all looked over, their eyes filled with hope. The corpse head also looked at the tribal leader. "What? Speak." The tribal leader replied, "We can lure that guy to Thousand Poisons Ridge. Let the corpse general beasts of Thousand Poisons Ridge deal with him." When the tribal leaders heard this, they were all overjoyed. How could they have forgotten about this? In the eyes of the corpse general beasts, Thousand Poisons Ridge was a forbidden area. Since ancient times, the corpse general beasts were not allowed to enter as they pleased. Therefore, they couldn't react in time. When they heard the leader's words, they all came to a realization. The corpse's eyes lit up. The 10,000 Poisons Ridge not only had tens of thousands of poison general corpse beasts, but many of them were also in groups. The small ones were a group of 1 or 200, while the large ones were tens of millions. Any super-evolved general corpse, no matter how powerful it was, would basically die if it went to the Thousand Poisons Ridge. Even someone as strong as corpse did not dare to casually go there. The corpse nodded in agreement. "Very well, then we'll lure him to the Myriad Poisons Ridge." The group of leaders responded one after another. The corpse reminded him again. "Remember, do not reveal our plan to anyone. Just arrange for these corpse generals to arrive at the designated location." The corpse generals nodded their heads once more. In the following days, embark continued to slaughter these corpse generals in the forest. However, although there were many corpse general beasts, not many of them had reached super evolution. Therefore, his kill points increased at a slower rate. He was wondering if he should look for super evolved general corpses in other places. From the memories of a few super evolved general corpses, he knew that this world actually had cities. East, south, west, and north, each of these cities had over 100 general corpses. A few of these cities had a population of over 100,000. Most of them had a population of over 1 million. If he went to these cities, he would definitely be able to obtain quite a bit of kill points. But at the same time, embark also knew that the more populated a city was, the more experts there would be. Furthermore, he already knew that super evolved general corpses were not the strongest experts in this world. Above level 10 super evolved general corpses were ancestral corpses. Those were existences that surpassed the grand desolate master realm. With embark's current strength, it would probably be quite difficult for him to deal with ancestral corpses. Moreover, after his sea dragon clone evolved into a level 10 strong mutant wild beast, its level never increased again. Even though embark's level was constantly increasing, it was still a level 10 desolate beast. This was probably due to the limitations of the Dragon Pearl shards. It only had 2 Dragon Pearl shards now and was unable to form a complete Dragon Pearl, so it could not evolve any further. It was unknown when it would be lucky enough to obtain a 3rd Dragon Pearl shard. Perhaps when that time came, the Sea Dragon clone's strength would receive a qualitative increase. On this day, embark continued to farm monsters in the forest. He inadvertently detected that there were more than 50 super evolved general corpses more than 100 kilometers away. This surprised embark. These super evolved general corpses had been hiding for the past few days. Why did they suddenly appear? He plundered the memories of a few of the super evolved general corpses. He discovered that these super evolved general corpses had all received orders from their tribe leaders to gather here. embark found it strange. These tribe leaders only said that they wanted these super evolved general corpses to gather here, but they did not say what they were here for. It seemed like there was some kind of conspiracy. However, no matter what conspiracy they had, he would kill them first. Thinking of this, embark teleported and arrived above these general corpses. The dragon-slaying saber slashed downward. Without a sound, these 50 super evolved general corpses were slaughtered. More than 5 billion kill points appeared in embark's mind. After killing these super evolved general corpses, embark continued to slaughter the surrounding general corpses. More than an hour later, more than 50 super evolved general corpses appeared. Just like before, embark slaughtered them all. More than an hour later, more than 50 super evolved general corpses appeared. After the 5th wave of general corpses appeared, embark could already tell. These general corpses were all pointing to the southeast. It was obvious that they were trying to lure him there. Logically speaking, since they wanted to lure him there, he should naturally go in the opposite direction. However, embark did not do that. He followed them and saw what they were up to. Even if there were stronger experts there, or if there was some danger waiting for him, embark could escape into the miniature world and easily resolve the danger. Therefore, embark followed them and there were 50 waves of super evolved general corpses. More than 50 waves of super evolved general corpses meant that there were more than 2,500 of them. embark was a little surprised. In order to lure him here, these general corpses had really put in a lot of effort. They directly used more than 2,500 super evolved general corpses as bait. After killing 2 more waves of super evolved general corpses, embark looked at a mountain. The mountain was about 5 kilometers tall. The mountain was densely wooded. Halfway up the mountain, smoke lingered. It looked like a fairyland. Chapter 524. embark was led to a mountain by the corpses. The mountain was about 5 kilometers tall. Halfway up the mountain, clouds and mist lingered, making it look like a fairyland. From the clouds and mist, there was a waterfall that fell all the way to the foot of the mountain. If it was on Earth, This place would look like the residence of an immortal. But at this moment, when Emosher probed out, he found that there were tens of thousands of corpse beasts on this mountain. Among these corpse beasts, the weakest ones were level 1 super-evolved corpse beasts. They were far from what ordinary corpse beasts in the forest could compare to. Moreover, these corpse beasts did not move alone, but in groups. The small groups had hundreds of them. The big ones had thousands, or even tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands. When Emosher saw this, he finally understood what these corpse beasts were up to. It turned out that they wanted to lure him here and let these corpse beasts deal with him. To be honest, these corpse beasts were indeed very strong. The most terrifying thing was that there were too many of them. Even those corpse general tribes would have to flee in front of these super-evolved corpse general beasts. But to Emosher, this was killing points. When he investigated the situation here, he was so excited that his eyes shone brightly. He really should thank these corpse generals. Without them, he probably wouldn't have been able to find such a place. In order to thank these corpse generals, Emosher killed the last wave of super-evolved corpse generals. Then, with a teleport, he arrived halfway up the mountain. Here, there was a group of more than 500 corpse beasts. All of them had pointy mouths and monkey cheeks. They looked like monkeys. However, it was much bigger than a monkey. They were more than 50 meters tall. They were chasing and playing among the giant trees. When they noticed a human figure in the air, they immediately cried out excitedly, "Squeak, squeak, squeak." They called their friends and surrounded Emosher. They gathered below Emosher and screamed excitedly. It could be seen that their eyes were blood red. Their claws were also blood red. They must have seen a lot of blood on a daily basis. Emosher waited for the group of more than 500 corpse beasts to gather at his feet, and continued to jump into the air, trying to catch him. In his right hand, the dragon Salyer appeared. Then, the dragon-slaying saber in his hand slashed down at the over 500 half-zombie beasts below. Silently, a huge ravine more than 500 meters wide and 2 kilometers long appeared in the forest below. More than 500 corpse beast commanders were reduced to a bloody pulp in the ravine. As for his kill points, it had increased by more than 50 billion. Awesome! This was much better than killing those zombie beasts in the ordinary forest below. After killing these corpse general beasts, another 1,000 or so corpse general beasts surrounded them. These were some flying corpse generals. They looked a little like flamingos. However, the difference between them and the flamingos was that their entire bodies were blood red. Their claws and beaks were sharper than the flamingos. They surrounded Emosher, who was in the air. Emosher already knew that these super-evolved beasts were poisonous. Even the air in this mountain was highly toxic. Even a level 10 super-evolved corpse would not be able to live for more than half an hour after entering this mountain. However, Emosher's body was impervious to poison, so the air here did not affect him at all. This time, because these flying corpse beasts were slightly scattered, Emosher used 3 slashes in a row to kill them all. A notification came from his mind. He had obtained more than 100 billion kill points. If this continued, 100 trillion kill points would not be a problem at all. After killing for 2 days, this hillside was already filled with huge ravines. Every huge ravine city was covered in blood-red soil. Emosher looked at the kill points in his mind. 983,988 billion. He was less than 2 trillion away from leveling up again. However, at this time, the energy in his body had been mostly consumed. Thus, he returned to the miniature world. With a thought, the energy in his body quickly filled up. Once again, he returned to reality and continued to fight. An instant of charging was enough for him to slash out more than 50 times. As the saying goes, charging for 5 minutes, talking for 2 hours. Next, after destroying 3 more groups of corpse beasts, a notification came from his mind. Frowny face, the kill points have reached the promotion standard. Do you want to promote now? Emosher was overjoyed. With a thought, he returned to the miniature world. In his mind, he said, "Promote. This promotion will take 5 minutes." With a thought, Emosher fast-forwarded the time. 5 minutes were completed in an instant. Another notification came from his mind: frowny face, promotion successful. Name, Emosure, level 5 evolved dragon, level 5 great desolate master, level 10 long Yenshur. Ability, click to expand. Emosure stretched out his right hand and clenched it into a fist. He stretched it out again and clenched it into a fist again. He felt the surging energy in his body. Emosure was secretly happy. He had finally reached the 5th step. Level 5 evolved dragon. He estimated that with his current strength, combined with the dragon salure, he could almost beat up a level 10 evolved dragon. In his mind, a system notification came again: frowny face, level 5 evolved dragon, miniature world can be upgraded. Do you want to level up now? Emosure nodded. Level up. This upgrade will take 72 hours. During the upgrade, it will be locked. The host will no longer be able to control anything in the miniature world, nor will he be able to enter or exit the miniature world. Hearing this notification, Emosure was not dissatisfied at all. Instead, he nodded in satisfaction. He had killed so many corpse beasts in a row. Although his body could instantly recover in the miniature world, his mental fatigue could also be recovered. But mentally, he couldn't help but feel a little tired. He even felt a little annoyed. Think about it: if you had to do the same thing for more than 10 days, dozens of days, or even hundreds of days, would you feel annoyed? Therefore, he could use these 72 hours to rest well. Emma was surprised to see that Emosure had not left. It had been a long time. Emosure had basically returned to the miniature world and left in an instant. Sometimes, before she could even react, he had already left again. This time he stopped. She asked, "Brother Emo, will you be staying for a while this time?" Emosure nodded. Yes. Emma was overjoyed and quickly said, "Then I'll go prepare some food for you." Emosure nodded again. At the same time, Happy heard the voice and walked out of the room not far away. When she heard that Emosure would be staying for a while this time, her face was full of smiles. Her eyes, which seemed to be able to speak, also curved into 2 crescent moons. Emosure immediately felt that spring had arrived. Flowers were blooming, birds were singing, and flowers were fragrant. Just looking at her smile was a kind of enjoyment. Chapter 525. Emosure stayed in the miniature world for 3 days. During these 3 days, Happy and Emma cooked different dishes for Emosure every day. Previously, when he was in the miniature world, he could eat whatever he wanted with just a thought, and a table would appear in front of him. However, Emosure still felt that something was missing from the dishes that had been transformed into this way. Now, the food made by the 2 of them made him feel the same as when he was eating in the past. It was rare for Emosure to enjoy such leisure time. The 4 of them chatted and laughed while eating. During these 3 days, Emosure watched the moon rise and the sunset with Happy every day. The days passed comfortably. Finally, 3 days later, Emosure was taking a noon nap. A system notification sounded in his mind. Upgrade complete. Emosure opened his eyes. He looked around. There didn't seem to be any changes around him. However, when he closed his eyes and sensed carefully, he found a shocking change. In the past, the miniature world was just a large piece of land. Outside of this land, everything was in chaos. Now, after the miniature world was upgraded, it had become a planet. The size of the planet was about the same as Earth in the past. Emosure was very surprised. The miniature world had become Earth? The area had expanded too much. However, on this planet, other than the large area that Emosure had modified, the rest was barren. Emosure began to modify this planet in his surprise. Emosure's modification was actually very simple. Yangtze River, Great Wall. Yellow Mountain, Yellow River. Pacific Ocean, Antarctica. Mount Everest, Amazon jungle. In short, he copied everything on Earth here. At the same time, he added many magnificent sceneries of the flaming land. For example, the sunrise of East Pole Island and the aurora of North Pole Island. His modification was very fast, almost completed in just a few seconds. The moment the modification was completed, a gust of fresh air rushed to his face. This Earth was not as bad as the Earth where Emosher lived before. It was also not like the Earth after transmigration where there were zombies everywhere. This was a virgin land that had not been developed yet. In the future, this would be my world, Emosher thought to himself. Moreover, this place couldn't be called a miniature space anymore. Emosher thought for a moment. He was too lazy to think of an awesome name, so he decided to call it Earth Space. Everything in this Earth space was under Emosher's control. If he wanted the mountains to collapse, the mountains would collapse. If he wanted the Earth to crack, the Earth would crack. If he was happy, he could make the Yangtze and Yellow rivers flow all over the planet. The Great Wall could encircle the Earth twice. With just a thought, Happy, Emma, and Emma's son flew into the air. The four of them began to travel around the world. Emma and Happy looked at the scenery of Earth that they were once familiar with, and their eyes brimmed with tears of excitement. He took them around the Earth space. After they had seen all the sights on Earth, Emosher let them return to their original positions. After that, Emosher bid farewell to the three of them and left Earth. He returned to the Thousand Poisons Ridge. Using his draconic senses, he quickly found a group of super-evolved zombie beasts. After that, he teleported to the mountain stream where the super-evolved zombie beasts were. With one slash, more than 800 super-evolved zombie beasts were turned into a bloody pulp. In his mind, there were more than 80 billion kill points. Now that he had become a 5th-rank evolved dragon, if he wanted to level up, he would need 1,000 trillion kill points. However, there were many super-evolved zombie beasts in the Thousand Poisons Ridge. It shouldn't be difficult to get 10 million kill points. Over the next few days, Emosher had been slaughtering these zombie beasts in the Thousand Poisons Ridge. His kill points were quickly accumulating. At the same time, in the huge cave, the corpse asked a tribe leader below, "That human should be dead. That human should be dead. Tell me, how did he die? Let me be happy too." The tribe leader hesitated for a moment before replying, "He is not dead yet." The corpse frowned and asked the tribe leader, "What happened? What happened?" The tribe leader replied, "Through our surveillance, we found that the poisonous fog there has no effect on him at all." The corpse asked again, "What about the zombie beasts? There are so many super-evolved zombie beasts there. I don't believe that those super-evolved zombie beasts have no effect on him. Especially those hundreds and thousands of zombie beasts, they can easily tear him apart." The tribe leader replied, "He killed a lot of super-evolved zombie beasts. And it seems that the more he kills, the more excited he gets. He specifically targets large groups of zombie beasts. According to our estimates, he has slaughtered more than 50 zombie beasts in the past few days." The corpse leader's expression changed when he heard that. Is this guy that strong? The other 50 or so tribe leaders didn't dare to make a sound. After a long while, the corpse leader said, "If that's the case, it seems that we have to ask the corpse ancestor to come out." The tribe leaders were all surprised when they heard that. The corpse ancestor's strength was above the super-evolved zombie beasts. Even a level 10 super-evolved zombie beasts had to be respectful in front of the corpse ancestor. If the corpse ancestor came out, killing that kid would be a piece of cake. But the problem was that the corpse ancestor hadn't appeared for a long time. Normally, the corpse ancestor wouldn't appear unless it was an extremely important matter. Although the matter this time was rather important, it couldn't even be considered very important, let alone extremely important. Would the corpse ancestor come out? The corpse leader looked at the suspicious gazes of the zombie leaders and shook his head. "I know what you're worried about, but this time, we have to ask the corpse ancestor to come out no matter what. If we're late, I'm afraid it'll be too late. I'm afraid our entire zombie beasts will be annihilated." The zombie leaders were all shocked when they heard that. A mere human could cause the entire zombie beasts to be annihilated? Was this a joke? But looking at the corpse leader's expression, it clearly wasn't a joke. The expressions of all the corpse commanders turned solemn. On this day, Emosher's kill points had reached more than 200 trillion after continuously slaughtering these zombie beasts. With less than 800 trillion, he would be able to level up again. But in the past few days, Zombie beasts that numbered more than 100,000 had rarely appeared. First of all, embark had already annihilated many large zombie beast clans. Secondly, these zombie beasts had a certain level of intelligence. They had long given up on dealing with this human when they saw how difficult it was to deal with him. Instead, they had all gone into hiding, afraid that this human would cause trouble for them. Speaking of which, these zombie beasts were all very bitter in their hearts. In the past, when those humans came to this mountain, they fought to kill them. But this time, this human was simply too valiant. They couldn't wait to hide, so how would they dare to show themselves in front of this human? Chapter 526. Embark was a little depressed at this moment. When he first arrived, the 1,000 Poisons Ridge's corpse general beasts were still in groups, and it was a scene of prosperity. Why were there suddenly no corpse general beasts? If these corpse general beasts knew what embark was thinking, they would probably beat him to death. Wasn't it all your fault? Why are you still pretending to be innocent? On this day, embark finally discovered another group of corpse general beasts. Moreover, there were more than 10 million corpse general beasts in this group. It was a group of corpse general ants. It was the largest group of corpse general beasts in the entire 1,000 Poisons Ridge. Although each corpse general ant was only the size of a house cat, due to their numbers advantage, no corpse general beasts in the entire 1,000 Poisons Ridge dared to fight them. It could be said that this group of corpse general ants was at the top of the food chain in the 1,000 Poisons Ridge. This group of corpse general ants had roamed the 1,000 Poisons Ridge for millions of years. They were indifferent to life and death, and would fight if they were dissatisfied. No corpse general beasts dared to provoke them. It could be said that other than themselves, no other creature in this world was their enemy. When embark discovered this group of corpse general ants, he was so excited that his body trembled. He originally thought that it would take a few more months for him to level up. He did not expect happiness to come so suddenly. The 5 mountains below were all nests of corpse general ants. Embark was thinking of a way to lure all the corpse general ants out, and then use a demon-suppressing orb to deal with them. After 2 hours of trying, he failed. At most, only 1 mountain's corpse general ants would come out each time. At this rate, wouldn't he be wasting 4 more demon-suppressing orbs? Moreover, if he killed all the corpse general ants in 1 mountain, the rest of the corpse general ants might hide inside and not come out. Embark thought for a moment, and finally slapped his head. To catch bandits, first catch the ringleader. How could he forget this? However, just as he was about to make a move, he suddenly frowned. This was because he detected a figure rapidly flying towards him from 1,000 kilometers away. What surprised him the most was that this figure didn't use any energy when flying. It did not have wings or any auxiliary flying devices. It just stood in the air and flew toward him at a speed of dozens of kilometers per second. Embark used the eye of the demon dragon to check his level. Type, General Corpse. Level 1 Corpse Ancestor. What the hell is Corpse Ancestor? Embark asked. In his mind, the system's voice sounded frowny face. Level 1 Corpse Ancestor is an existence that surpasses the Grand Desolate Master Realm. Embark understood. So it was a realm even higher than the Grand Desolate Master. It seemed that he had to be careful. Soon, the Corpse Ancestor arrived within 10 kilometers of Embark. Embark condensed a pair of devil dragon wings on his back and flew into the air. The two of them faced each other from a distance of 10 kilometers. With their strength, although they were 5 kilometers away, they could even see each other's hair. At their level, 10 kilometers was the maximum distance they could react to. If they were any closer and one of them suddenly attacked, the other wouldn't be able to react in time. Embark sized up the Corpse Ancestor. He was not hundreds of meters tall like the other general corpses. He was only the size of a normal human. The skin on his body was wrinkled. If someone with OCD were to see this, they would probably want to flatten him with an iron. On his wrinkled head, there were a few thin strands of long white hair. The white hair fluttered in the wind, giving off an ethereal feeling. His face, hands, and feet all looked like a normal human. There were no fangs or claws. Emosher was secretly surprised. Could it be that after evolving into a corpse ancestor, he would become more like a human? It seemed that the stronger a creature was, the more human-like it would be. So the human form was the most suitable form in the universe? The corpse ancestor was also carefully sizing up Emosher. After a while, he opened his mouth and said, "You're that human?" The words that came out of his mouth were actually in human language. Emosher nodded, "Yes." The corpse ancestor paused, then said with a hoarse voice, "I don't want to fight, but I advise you to leave my world immediately." Emosher chuckled and said, "You general corpses destroyed my world. I had no choice but to come to your world to hunt general corpses. Only then can I barely survive." The corpse ancestor said coldly, "Since that's the case, there's no room for discussion?" Emosher made an inviting gesture, "Bring it on." The corpse ancestor said coldly, "This is your last chance." Emosher smiled, "That's what I wanted to tell you." Seeing Emosher being so stubborn, the corpse ancestor's eyes flickered with red light. Then he slowly clenched his right fist. 3 long spikes slowly grew out from the gaps between the 3 fingers of his right fist, a little like Uncle Wolf's claws. However, they were not steel claws, but extremely sharp horny claws. At the same time, his left arm rapidly changed and became thicker. A bony defensive layer formed on the surface of his left arm. Overall, his left arm looked like an American shield. Emosher was slightly puzzled when he saw this. At the level of the corpse ancestor, shouldn't the battle be like Star Wars, with lasers flying back and forth? Why was he so primitive, using claws and shields? Emosher tried to plunder the corpse ancestor's memories to take a look. But soon, the system sent a notification frowny face plunder failed. Obviously, the corpse ancestor's realm was much higher than Emosher's. Therefore, the chances of failure were higher. Shaking his head, the dragon salure suddenly appeared in Emosher's right hand. When the corpse ancestor saw the dragon salure in Emosher's hand, he only glanced at the unremarkable blade. However, his body did not move at all. From Emosher's right arm, energy continued to pour into the dragon salure. The corpse ancestor still did not move at all. After the dragon salure finished charging, Emosher looked at the corpse ancestor. His gaze instantly became sharp. He swung the blade down with his right hand. There was no energy, no sound. The ground beneath the corpse ancestor was directly split open, creating a huge crack that was 10 kilometers long and 300 meters wide. However, the corpse ancestor had already disappeared in an instant. When he reappeared, he was already behind Emosher's back. The sharp claws on his right hand pierced towards Emosher's back. Puff! It instantly pierced through his heart. Emosher was startled. He had yet to regain his senses. Puff! The sharp claws had already been pulled out, and then he waved them again. Shwa! His head had already flown high into the air. At this moment, there was only one thought in Emosher's mind. So damn fast. Only now did he truly understand the corpse ancestor's fighting style. There were no fancy movements, no huge amount of energy. There was only one word: fast. Furthermore, the corpse ancestor had actually used energy. However, he did not release his energy, but instead gathered it on his claws. This would make the claws 100 times sharper. Coupled with his speed, he would be invincible. This was the fighting style of someone who had reached a certain realm. Chapter 527. Corpse ancestor chopped off Emosher's head, but his old bark-like face didn't have the slightest bit of expression. His pair of gray eyes also didn't have a trace of emotion. Instead, he looked at Emosher's headless corpse that was rapidly falling, motionless. And at this moment, another figure appeared behind corpse ancestor without any warning. The moment this figure appeared, a jet-black pig slaughtering knife in his right hand chopped down at corpse ancestor's head. That's right, this person was Emosher. Facing a guy who he had never seen before who was at a higher realm than him, how could Emosher not be prepared at all? The one who had his head chopped off earlier was naturally his clone. At this moment, Emosher suddenly chopped down with his knife. Corpse Ancestor's reaction was also extremely fast. Although Emoshur was behind him, it was as if he had eyes on his back. His body slanted slightly, dodging Emoshur's knife. At the same time, the sharp claws on his right hand directly slashed towards Emoshur's abdomen. Emoshur hurriedly dodged backwards. With his experience, his dragon-slaughtering knife could only display its greatest power from a distance. If it was in close range, it would be very difficult to display its power. But Corpse Ancestor's battle experience was extremely rich. He didn't give Emoshur a chance to escape at all. He directly chased after Emoshur. At the same time, his right claws continuously stabbed towards Emoshur's chest, eyes, and neck. In the past battles, Emoshur had mostly relied on his powerful strength or powerful weapons to crush his opponents within 1 or 2 moves. It was very rare for him to fight in close range with an opponent who was slightly stronger than him. For a moment, it was somewhat difficult for him to adapt. He only had the power to parry and didn't have the ability to counterattack. With a single teleport, he appeared several hundred meters away. But in the next moment, Corpse Ancestor also teleported over. And the moment he arrived, he was behind Emoshur and his sharp claws pierced towards the back of Emoshur's head. Emoshur suddenly somersaulted forward, dodging this claw. At the same time, his right leg suddenly kicked towards Corpse Ancestor's face as he somersaulted in the air. The shield on Ancestor Corpse's left arm blocked Emoshur's kick, and the sharp claws on his right arm struck towards Emoshur once again. As Emoshur retreated, black dragon scales appeared on his body. This guy's attacks were too fast and fierce. He wasn't very good at close combat, so he really couldn't take it. Ding 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 ding. Just as Emoshur's dragon scales covered his entire body, that fellow's sharp claws had already slashed 5 times across Emoshur's body. It created a series of sparks. A wisp of surprise flashed on Corpse Ancestor's withered face that seemed to be eternally expressionless like an old tree. However, his hands did not stop moving at all. Since he couldn't do any damage to Emoshur's body, the shield on his left arm came in handy. He continued to hit Emoshur's body viciously. Bang! It smashed onto Emoshur's shoulder. Bang! It landed on Emoshur's chest. Bang! It landed on Emoshur's head. It landed on Emoshur to the point that he felt a bit dizzy. This fellow's shield didn't look heavy, but when it landed on him, it was extremely powerful. It smashed Emoshur to the point that he kept falling towards the ground. However, when Emoshur was only 500 meters away from the ground, his shield smashed onto Emoshur's chest. Bang! This was the most powerful attack. Emoshur was smashed into the left side of the mountain. Boom! His entire body sank into the cliff. But before he could react, a voice suddenly rang out. Corpse Ancestor's shield instantly appeared in front of him and smashed towards his chest. Emoshur gathered all the energy in his body to his chest, instantly forming an energy shield. He wanted to block this attack. However, just as the shield was about to hit the energy shield, Corpse Ancestor's sharp claws suddenly pierced out, aiming straight for Emoshur's eyes. Although Emoshur's head was covered in scales, his eyes weren't. At this moment, Emoshur instantly understood Corpse Ancestor's plan. This fellow was simply too shrewd. Previously, he kept hitting him with his shield just to numb him, to make him focus all his attention on his shield. However, at this crucial moment, his sharp claws suddenly appeared and pierced towards Emoshur's eyes. He was indeed extremely shrewd, but also extremely vicious. Puff! This claw viciously pierced into Emoshur's eyes. His entire body was nailed into the stone wall. However, at this moment, another figure had already appeared behind Corpse Ancestor. Another pig-slaughtering knife in his hand slashed towards Corpse Ancestor. Corpse Ancestor's figure flashed and disappeared. When he appeared again, he was already behind Emoshur. He dodged the pig-slaughtering knife. At the same time, he clamped his legs around Emoshur's waist. His left arm fiercely strangled Emoshur's neck. The sharp claws in his hand pierced towards Emoshur's eyes. Emoshur learned his lesson this time. He suddenly raised his left arm horizontally in front of his eyes. He blocked the sharp claws. Seeing that his attack failed, Corpse Ancestor's left arm loosened Emoshur's grip. At the same time, the shield on his left arm continuously smashed towards embark. After a while, this clone of embark was also killed. However, soon, another clone of embark appeared. Corpse Ancestor didn't care at all at first. After all, many creatures knew the clone technique. This wasn't strange. However, as time passed, his indifference turned into surprise, then shock, then amazement, and finally disbelief. It was already very good for an ordinary creature to have one clone. It was already very rare to have two. He had only heard of creatures that could have 3 to 5 clones, but he had never seen one before. However, this fellow had already killed more than 30 of his clones, and they were still appearing endlessly. Was there no end to this guy's doppelgangers? However, it didn't matter. He didn't believe that his clone wouldn't run out. 50 should be the limit. However, after killing 50 clones, the 51st one quickly jumped out. Then the 60th one. The 70th one. The 80th one. This caused Corpse Ancestor to break down. Others only had 2 or 3 clones, but this fellow already had 80 clones, and they were still jumping out endlessly. Think about it, no matter how strong you were, how would you feel when you encountered such a situation? He killed one after another. He killed 10 after 10. As the saying goes, even if you kill one of me, there will be thousands of me. Wasn't this very frustrating? At the same time, embark was enjoying the exposure bath in his own space on Earth. He was enjoying Corpse Ancestor's performance. At the same time, he would occasionally comment. This clone died so miserably. It was almost smashed into a meat patty. This clone's eyes were pierced through by spikes. Fortunately, it wasn't my main body. Hey, this is too much. You directly let such a long spike go through my mouth and come out from below. Do you have to be so cruel? In fact, embark wasn't just enjoying his clones being killed one by one. He let his clones fight Corpse Ancestor one by one because he wanted to learn some close combat experience from Corpse Ancestor. Chapter 528. While Corpse Ancestor was killing embark's clones, embark was hiding in his own space on Earth, leisurely sunbathing. At the same time, he was also learning Corpse Ancestor's fighting style with the help of these clones. Corpse Ancestor's fighting style didn't seem to have any huge energy, nor did it have any destructive power. But every move was extremely dangerous. If he wasn't careful, he would lose his life. If embark really fought with Corpse Ancestor, he would have died a long time ago. And this kind of fighting style saved a lot of energy. If they fought like this, everyone could fight for a long time. There was no need to worry about endurance. Finally, after Corpse Ancestor killed embark's 100th clone, with a thought, embark arrived behind Corpse Ancestor. The moment he appeared, the dragon-slaying saber in his right hand had already silently pierced towards Corpse Ancestor's back. At this time, Corpse Ancestor couldn't remember how many clones he had killed. He was already a little irritated. At this moment, he felt the danger behind him. He turned around abruptly. At the same time that he used his body to spin away from the tip of the saber, the sharp claws on his right arm had already pierced towards embark's chest. At this time, embark had already adapted to his close combat style. His body also twisted in an extremely strange way, dodging this claw. At the same time, the saber that had already stabbed out, after deviating by a foot, was suddenly pulled back. All of this seemed to take a long time, but in fact, this stab and pull was completed in a short instant. Chi! With a soft sound, the dragon-slaying saber directly cut a 2-inch long wound on Corpse Ancestor's waist. Black blood immediately spurted out. Corpse Ancestor finally had a surprised expression on his face. The strength of his body was definitely not something that could be hurt by a sword. How could this guy's unremarkable saber actually cut his skin? However, he didn't care. His self-healing ability was extremely strong. It was just a superficial wound, so what was it? Thus, he continued to fight with embark. His shield smashed heavily into embark's body from time to time. Embark's dragon-slaughtering saber also left bloody wounds on his body from time to time. As for Corpse Ancestor, the more he fought, the more shocked he became. First of all, this fellow was more than 10 times stronger than all of the previous clones. From the looks of it, this should be the real body. Secondly, the wounds that this guy had left on his body showed no signs of healing. The wound left behind at the beginning was still bleeding profusely. The black blood that flowed out of the dozens of wounds on his body had long since dyed his entire body black. Seeing that he couldn't kill this guy, and that guy was leaving more and more wounds on his body, he knew that he could not delay any longer. His ultimate move might be able to kill this fellow, but the release of the ultimate move required time to accumulate power. And at this moment, this guy definitely wouldn't give him the time to gather power. Therefore, he could only temporarily flee and avoid the brunt of the attack. Then, he hid in the dark and secretly accumulated power. At that time, he would take advantage of the fact that he was unprepared and kill him with a big move. The plan was very good, but would it really work? At this moment, embark was smashed to the ground by Corpse Ancestor's shield. Then, he quickly flew into the distance. However, embark only moved his mind. When Corpse Ancestor flew over a mountain ridge, 2 blood-red chains suddenly extended from the mountain ridge. They instantly shot out like lightning and wrapped around Corpse Ancestor's feet. Corpse Ancestor lowered his head and looked at the 2 blood-red chains. He sneered in his heart. A mere chain actually wanted to bind Corpse Ancestor? As expected, humans were still too naive. Thinking of this, he slashed at the chain on his right foot with his right claw. Ding ding ding, an ear-piercing sound rang out. The blood-red chain emitted a burst of sparks. However, only 3 faint marks appeared on it. There was no sign of it breaking at all. Corpse Ancestor was shocked. His sharp claws could cut through iron like mud and were invincible. But now, he couldn't even cut a mere chain. It could be seen that these chains were definitely not ordinary. In fact, these 2 chains were naturally not ordinary. They were embark's dragon binding lasso. Now, embark's dragon binding lasso could appear in many different ways. It could be a single thick chain, or it could be a few or even dozens of chains. In short, it could be freely changed according to embark's will. Corpse Ancestor's claw couldn't break it, so he hurriedly tried to use teleportation to escape. However, he had clearly underestimated the power of this dragon binding lasso. Not only could the dragon binding lasso trap the opponent, it could also compress the opponent's energy level and strength level to the maximum. As a result, Corpse Ancestor's strength was at most equivalent to a level 10 Grand Desolate Master. It was far from his peak level. At this moment, embark flew out from the pit on the ground. Corpse Ancestor expected that this human would definitely fly over. Therefore, he said, "Who exactly are you? How can you be so strong?" With these words, he numbed embark. At the same time, he condensed energy in his right arm. He was accumulating energy for his big move. He wanted to release his strongest attack when he was cornered. He wanted to let this lowly human know that Corpse Ancestor was sacred and inviolable. However, embark wasn't surprised at all. He stood on the ground and raised his head to look at the bound Corpse Ancestor above the mountain ridge. He held the dragon salure with both hands that had already been infused with energy and swept it towards Corpse Ancestor like a golf player. At this moment, a huge gap that was 500 meters wide appeared on the mountain ridge that was 10,000 meters long and 500 meters tall. As for Corpse Ancestor, under the attack of the dragon salure, he directly turned into a black rain of blood that filled the sky and sprinkled down. The ground below was dyed black. Whoosh! embark heaved a sigh of relief. This Corpse Ancestor was really difficult to deal with. But then again, this dragon salure was really powerful. Corpse Ancestor's strong body couldn't withstand a single attack from the dragon salure. Of course, he had also learned a lot of combat skills from Corpse Ancestor. In the future, when he encountered a powerful enemy, it wouldn't just be a competition of energy and physical strength. He could use more techniques to defeat his opponent. At this moment, after exterminating Corpse Ancestor, embark returned to his own space on Earth. With a thought, he instantly recovered all of his exhausted stamina and energy. Only then did he return to the Thousand Poison Ridge. He looked at the 5 mountain peaks where the corpse general ant nest was located. Then, it was time to exterminate these tens of millions of corpse general ants. At the same time, in a cave more than 10,000 kilometers away, the 50 or so tribe leaders and the corpse were looking at a stone wall in front of them. On this stone wall, there were many mountains, forests, rivers, and deserts. It looked like a map. On the map, there were 2 dots of light, one red and one green, moving around. One of the corpse leaders looked at the green dot of light and said, "Corpse, is there a problem with corpse ancestor?" The corpse glared at the corpse leader. "What do you think?" Chapter 529. More than 50 corpse general tribe leaders and corpse ancestor kept looking at the 2 light spots on the map on the stone wall. These 2 light spots were green and red. The green one represented corpse ancestor, and the red one represented that human. After a long while, a tribe leader asked, "Is corpse ancestor all right?" As soon as this was said, the other leaders all turned to look at this leader as if they were looking at an idiot. Corpse ancestor glared at him. "What do you think?" That tribe leader also felt that he had said something wrong. He quickly took a step back and said, "Corpse ancestor is invincible and invincible. That lowly human is just a little worm in front of corpse ancestor." After saying this, he felt that the tribe leaders had shifted their gazes away from him. He secretly raised his head to take a look, and corpse ancestor's expression became better. However, this tribe leader still had a question in his heart. After hesitating for a moment, he finally made up his mind and asked, "I'm just wondering why we still haven't killed that lowly human after such a long time?" This sentence was the common thought of all the leaders present. Their corpse ancestor was invincible and invincible. This was without a doubt. But why was it that it had been half an hour, and there was still no winner? Was that human so strong that he could withstand corpse ancestor's attacks for half an hour? However, although these leaders were puzzled, they didn't dare to ask. Because as long as they asked, they would be labeled as doubting corpse ancestor by the other leaders. Fortunately, this iron fool asked at this time. They didn't have to worry about it anymore. Corpse ancestor glared at that iron fool again. He said, "You dare to doubt corpse ancestor?" That corpse general leader immediately broke out in cold sweat when he heard this. He quickly knelt down and said, "This subordinate doesn't dare." Corpse ancestor snorted coldly, "I don't think you dare either." Then he turned to look at the light spots on the wall behind him and said, "Maybe." Corpse ancestor is deliberately playing with this guy. As soon as these words were said, the other leaders seemed to have found a reasonable explanation. They were all relieved. Corpse ancestor is wise. We are far inferior to corpse ancestor. Corpse ancestor hasn't appeared for a long time. It's rare for him to come out, so of course he wants to relax. That guy is like corpse ancestor's prey. Corpse ancestor will play with him for the time being. When I'm done playing, I'll kill him. All the tribal leaders had relaxed and joyful expressions on their faces. But soon, the smile on the leader's face froze. He pointed at the map on the stone wall and was at a loss for words. Corpse ancestor, all the corpse generals turned their heads to look. Soon after, all of the corpse commanders were dumbfounded, and their expressions were exactly the same as the iron and simple-minded leader. Even the corpse widened its gray eyes. His gray eyes were filled with disbelief and incredulity. Because the green dot on the stone wall map had been extinguished, what did this mean? The corpse ancestor's life force vanished. This thought made the corpse generals look as if they had seen a ghost. As far as they knew, the corpse ancestor was immortal. It was said that the corpse ancestor had lived for over 30,000 years, and he would live forever. But now, he was dead. How was this possible? They couldn't believe it. They didn't want to believe it. How did corpse ancestor die? However, the light spots would not lie. Their stone wall map was a special corpse tool refined by the corpse ancestor. As long as it captured the aura of a certain creature, and then controlled the aura into the stone wall map, it would be able to see the location and life force of that creature. The location on the map represented the location of that creature. The light spots on the map represented the life force of that creature. For 30,000 years, this light spot had never been wrong. Something refined by the corpse ancestor could never be wrong. In other words, the corpse ancestor's life force had already vanished. The corpse ancestor was dead. This caused the higher-ups of the corpse generals to be both terrified and confused. After a long while, the iron and simple-minded leader asked, "Corpse leader, what do we do now?" The corpse leader pondered for a long while before speaking. "Hide." The moment these words were spoken, the corpse generals all looked at the corpse leader in shock. In their eyes, humans were lowly and insignificant insects. But now the corpse generals, had to hide for the sake of a mere human. This was simply a huge joke. But at this moment, none of the corpse generals could laugh. They all knew how serious the situation was. If the corpse ancestor was truly dead, then the human on the surface was so powerful that it was simply unimaginable. Facing such an enemy, what else could they do? They could only hide. The corpse leader said, "Before we confirm the whereabouts of the corpse ancestor, no one is allowed to appear in front of that human." All the leaders had solemn expressions as they replied, "Yes." After the corpse leader finished speaking, he turned to look at the blood-red light spot on the stone wall map. They had sacrificed so many corpse generals to lure this fellow to the Myriad Poisons Ridge. They had originally thought that the poisonous creatures in the Myriad Poisons Ridge would definitely not let this fellow live for more than 2 days. In the end, they had not expected this fellow to survive in the Myriad Poisons Ridge for so long. He had even gone on a killing spree in the Myriad Poisons Ridge. And now, they suspected that he had even killed the corpse ancestor. How could this human be so powerful? At this moment, Mosher was in the air above the Myriad Poisons Ridge, looking down at the 5 mountain peaks that were shaped like human fingers. These 5 mountain peaks were like the 5-finger mountains of Tathagata. The basin below was like a palm. Within these 5 mountain peaks were 5 general corpse ant nests. And according to his investigation, the corpse ant queen lived under the ground of the palm. Mosher was not interested in the ant queen. Previously, when he killed the corpse ancestor, he only obtained a mere 10 slaughter points. So now he wanted quantity, not quality. The tens of millions of corpse general ants in the ant nests were his true target. However, these corpse general ants were well organized. At most, only one ant nest would have all the corpse general ants come out. In that case, he would have to waste 5 demon-suppressing orbs. So, that was only a last resort. As for the best plan, Mosher had already thought of it. At this moment, he teleported and arrived at the ant nest under the giant palm. This was a large hall that was several thousand square meters in size. The floor, walls, and ceiling of the hall were crawling with corpse general ants the size of house cats. Mosher raised his eyes and looked around. These corpse commander ants were squeezing together. There were countless of them. However, although there were many corpse general ants, they were not in a mess. On the contrary, they were entering and exiting in an orderly manner. It was as if there was someone directing the traffic. Upon closer inspection, each corpse general ant had a pair of sharp little clamps on its head. It was like a pair of scissors that could easily cut rocks into pieces. Chapter 530. At the foot of the 5 Fingers Mountain, 500 meters below the palm. In the underground ant nest. Corpse general ants the size of house cats were densely packed everywhere. Someone with trypophobia would probably be scared to death here. Even Mosher felt his scalp go numb. The moment Mosher appeared, the tens of thousands of corpse general ants actually stopped in unison. Mosher didn't give them a chance to react at all. He teleported again and arrived at a smaller cave. In this cave, there was a huge corpse general ant that was 100 meters long. It was dragging a huge, bloated abdomen that was like an oversized sack. It looked like it was extremely inconvenient to move. However, Mosher wouldn't let his guard down. This was because there were 2 scythe-like clamps on its head that were 10 meters long. This pair of clamps could easily cut through steel. This huge corpse general ant was the ant queen in this cave. It was responsible for producing corpse general ants. When the ant queen saw a human suddenly appear in the ant nest, she was a little puzzled. Emosure took out the dragon-slaying saber. The corpse general ant immediately let out an ear-piercing squeak. The two huge sickle-like clamps kept waving. The corpse general ant queen didn't immediately attack Emosure. It was an ant queen, and it was good at producing, not fighting. The squeaking sound from its throat wasn't a threat to Emosure, but to shake people, shake ants. The corpse general ants outside the ant queen's cave were all shocked when they heard the corpse general ant's voice. The corpse general ant's boudoir had been invaded. How could this be? They hurriedly rushed into the ant queen's boudoir. However, just as they arrived at the entrance of the ant queen's boudoir, rumble, there was a loud sound. A huge crack that was dozens of meters wide appeared from the top to the bottom of the ant queen's boudoir. All the corpse general ants were stunned. The ant queen's boudoir had cracked open. They hurriedly rushed into the ant queen's boudoir. They saw that the ant queen's body had already been broken into two halves. This was especially true for its huge, bag-like abdomen, which directly exploded. A large amount of black blood flowed out, as well as countless fist-sized ant eggs. The queen ant's head kept rolling on the ground. In the end, it rolled to the side of an upright creature. The creature stretched out its right foot and stepped on the queen's head. When the corpse commander ants saw this, their eyes were about to split open. Chi-chi, chi-chi-chi, chi-chi-chi, they all let out angry roars from their throats. The reproduction of their species depended on the ant queen. The death of the queen ant was the same as ending their bloodline, although they could cultivate another queen ant. However, the incubation period of an ant queen was very long, at least thousands of years. In other words, in the next few thousand years, their species would not have any new blood. If they encountered a powerful enemy, their species would be finished. It was truly over. This caused these soldier ants to be unable to restrain their anger. At this moment, Emosure made an even more provocative move. He stepped on the corpse ant queen's huge head and exerted force. The queen ant's head instantly shattered like a watermelon. Even the ground under the queen ant's head was caved in by Emosure's foot. When the corpse commander ants saw this, they almost split open. Chi, 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 they all let out even sharper cries. Their originally large black eyes were now filled with blood vessels. They no longer cared and pounced on the two-legged creature. At this moment, Emosure condensed a pair of wings behind him and flew towards the top of the mountain that had been slashed open by two Dao. He flew out of the ground. The corpse commander ants behind him naturally chased after him relentlessly. As they chased, they let out sharp cries. Chi, 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 chi. Even more corpse general ants heard the angry signal and chased towards the ground. The corpse commander ant queen was destroyed, and even its head was crushed. This caused all of the corpse general ants to be furious. They no longer cared. As a result, the tens of millions of corpse commander ants on the 5 mountain peaks all surged towards the ground. Looking down from the sky, it was as if the 5 huge fingers had been pierced with thousands of bloody holes. Black blood continued to gush out from within. In the sky, Emosure looked at the corpse commander ants rolling towards him and finally smiled. A large number of corpse commander ants surged out from the cracks in the ground below Wang Yi. They saw that Wang Yi had already risen to more than 500 meters in the air. Thus, they began to build an ant tower. Countless corpse commander ants piled up higher and higher. Soon, they reached a height of more than 200 meters. It had to be said that the corpse commander ants were really united. However, no matter how fast they built, they were not as fast as Emosure's flying speed. Emosure's wings flapped slightly and he was about to continue rising. However, at this moment, in the sky, countless black things enveloped Emosure. When Emosure looked up, he saw that they were corpse commander ants with transparent wings. These corpse commander ants were much larger than ordinary corpse commander ants. Each of them was about the size of a dog. They had 2 pairs of transparent wings, and like a large dark cloud, they enveloped Emosure. In almost an instant, Emosure was completely enveloped. In addition, The ant towers below were also surging down. Under the pincer attack, embark had nowhere to run. He fell from a height of 500 meters. As a result, tens of thousands of corpse commander ants continued to swarm towards embark. They formed a huge ant ball around embark, enveloping him. However, this was not the end. In the nest of corpse commander ants, there were still countless corpse commander ants that continued to swarm towards the giant dragon ball. Every corpse commander ant seemed to want to get a piece of meat. 15 minutes later, this huge ant ball had reached a diameter of 1 kilometer. If anyone else saw this scene, they would be extremely shocked. The giant ant ball with a diameter of 1 kilometer kept rolling in the center of the giant palm formed by the five-finger mountain. After a few more minutes, all the ant nests were empty. Tens of millions of corpse commander ants were all attached to the giant ant ball. The scene looked extremely terrifying. It was also at this moment that the black ball of corpse general ants suddenly emitted a chaotic radiance. This light was extremely sharp. It pierced through the giant ant ball in almost an instant. Then, it spread throughout the entire world. No matter what kind of creature it was, they were temporarily blinded at this moment. They could not see anything. Or rather, what they could see was the chaotic color that filled the entire world. The sky was chaotic, and the earth was chaotic. The mountains were chaotic, and the water was chaotic. Even they themselves had turned into the color of chaos. 5 minutes later, the chaotic color finally receded. The entire world was quiet. Chapter 5:31. When the primal chaos-colored light gradually dissipated, Qin Feng's expression changed. The entire world was finally peaceful. The world was still the same world. The forest was still the same forest. But the giant ant ball, the tens of thousands of corpse general ants, had completely disappeared, as if they had never existed. Embark floated in the air, his body unscathed. Although those corpse general ants looked terrifying, they were all level 1 super-evolved corpse general beasts. They couldn't even break through his energy shield. In embark's mind, the system's pleasant voice finally sounded frowny face total kill points, 1082, 3,775 trillion. You can advance to rank 6. Advance immediately? Embark replied in his mind, advance. This advancement will take 5 minutes. The system prompted. Soon, 5 minutes had passed. The system's pleasant voice sounded in embark's mind again, frowny face, advancement successful. Embark took a deep breath, feeling the surging energy in his body. He was slightly excited. He was already at rank 6. Would rank 10 be far away? Would the next rank be far away? Since he had this corpse general world to collect kill points, he must seize the time to advance his strength to super-evolved giant dragon before those giant dragons arrived. According to the Giant Dragon World Strength classification, the giant dragons were Giant Dragon, Evolved Giant Dragon, Super Evolved Giant Dragon, Ancient Giant Dragon, Archaic Ancestral Dragon, Dragon God. In the 10,000 dragon realm, every giant dragon was born as a giant dragon. Most giant dragons, in their long lives, remained as giant dragons their entire lives. It was difficult to advance further. And out of 100 giant dragons, only one could become an evolved giant dragon. Out of 100 evolved giant dragons, only one super-evolved giant dragon. In other words, out of 10,000 giant dragons, only one super-evolved giant dragon could be born. Therefore, only by becoming a super-evolved giant dragon could one be considered a giant dragon powerhouse. Embark estimated that if another giant dragon came to the Flaming Land to investigate Kong Jiu's death, it would at most be a rank 10 evolved giant dragon. Therefore, to be safe, he must become a super-evolved giant dragon, one rank higher than them. Only then would he be able to crush them. Thinking of this, Embark closed his eyes and sensed the situation in the Dragon Palace. Fortunately, the Dragon Palace hadn't been attacked by any general corpse yet. By now, Embark had pretty much wrecked the entire Myriad Poisons Ridge. It was time to go to the next place. But before he left, there was one more thing he had to do. System, check in for a special event. The system's voice replied instantly, frowny face, sign in successful. Sign in event, slaughter of zombie ants. Sign in reward, 1 corpse general ant queen. The next moment, a corpse general ant queen appeared in Emosher's backpack. It was 100 meters long and had a huge belly. There was also a sickle-shaped clamp on its head that was several meters long. It was exactly the same as the corpse general ant queen that Emosher had killed. Emosher was puzzled. He took a closer look at the corpse ant queen. Corpse general ant queen, level 2 super evolved corpse general beast. Through continuous eating, they could continue to lay eggs. The more it eats, the faster it will lay eggs. Don't you need to breed for this? Emosher asked. The system replied, the corpse general ant queen is not an ant. It is a hermaphrodite and can complete all tasks by itself. Emosher nodded. Understood. With a thought, he took out the corpse general ant queen from his backpack. He could feel that he was connected to this corpse general ant queen. With a thought, he could order this corpse general ant queen. He asked with his mind, are you hungry? The corpse general ant queen nodded its huge head, and at the same time, the pair of sickle-shaped clamps on its mouth kept waving quickly. Emosher moved his mind again, and his dragon will lifted a corpse beast that was more than 100 meters long. The corpse beast was 5 kilometers away when it was suddenly lifted up by an inexplicable force. It was shocked. It let out a scream like a pig being slaughtered. It kept struggling with its 6 legs. But under Emosher's huge dragon will, it couldn't move at all. Finally, it was placed in front of the corpse general ant queen. When the corpse general ant queen saw its food, its huge eyes lit up. A pair of front legs with sharp hooks pierced into the corpse beast's body and pulled. Hiss! The corpse beast was split into 2 halves. It quickly tore off a piece of meat from the corpse general ant queen's sickle-shaped clamps, picked it up, and stuffed it into its mouth. Then, it quickly picked up a second piece of meat and stuffed it into its mouth. Its speed was extremely fast and its frequency was extremely high. The 100-meter-long beast was completely devoured in just a minute. Not even its bones were left. It was also at this moment that the bottom of its abdomen began to wriggle quickly. A moment later, 10 grayish-white, fist-sized eggs were laid. Emosher looked at these eggs and sighed to himself. The corpse general ant queen was very efficient. It had just finished eating and it had already laid 10 eggs. If humans could be so fast, there wouldn't be so many infertility cases. But looking at the 10 grayish-white eggs, he was a little worried. Queen, how long will it take for these eggs to become corpse general ants? The queen's answer was, 10 days. Emosher shook his head. 10 days was too slow. With a thought, he brought the 10 eggs into Earth space. Then he sped up the flow of time. In just an instant, cracks appeared on the 10 eggs. Then one by one, black legs burst out of the eggs. Heads popped out one by one. Soon, 10 tiny corpse general ants popped out. Emosher moved his mind again and brought the 10 fist-sized corpse general ants to the corpse general ant queen. The corpse general ant queen was shocked. So fast. Emosher said again. A newborn corpse general ant isn't big enough. The corpse general ant queen immediately communicated with Emosher through its mind. They also need to eat continuously to grow bigger. Emosher nodded. Then, Long Nian caught another corpse general ant. When the 10 little ones saw it, they were instantly excited. They climbed onto the 100-meter-long beast's body and kept biting. The 5 little ones only spent 10 minutes to gnaw off a 10-meter-long leg of the 100-meter-long beast. As for their size, it was obvious that they had grown. They were about 1/5 bigger than before. Emosher nodded. They're growing quite fast. The rest of the unfinished beast meat was given to the ant queen. The queen's appetite was much bigger. In just a minute, it quickly swallowed the beast. Then, it laid another 10 eggs. Using the same method, Emosher made the 10 eggs break out of their shells in an extremely short period of time. Then, he continued to feed them. Newborn corpse general ants didn't have a big appetite. Or rather, ordinary corpse general ants didn't have a big appetite. Only the corpse general ant queen. This guy seemed to be a bottomless pit. It seemed that no matter how much meat was placed in front of it, it could easily finish it and then continue to lay eggs. Chapter 5:32. The more the corpse ant queen ate, the faster it grew. In just one day, it had already given birth to 100 corpse general ants. And on this day, the first 10 corpse general ants had also grown to twice their original size. Emosher looked at the 500 corpse general ants and had an idea in his mind. He had originally planned to leave the 1,000 poisons ridge that he had almost destroyed. But now, he planned to nurture this corpse ant colony first. He needed at least 10,000 corpse general ants to form a scale. Then, he would go to the cities of the corpse general ants and mess with them. After all, the corpse general ants that the corpse general ants killed were also for Emosher's kill points. It was easy to imagine how much kill points he would get if he had millions or even tens of millions of corpse general ants in a corpse general city. Don't call it cruel. When the corpse general ants invaded the flaming continent, they had no mercy at all. If they still talked about mercy when dealing with invaders, they would be too saintly. The next day, Emosher continued. The corpse general ant queen gave birth to another 100 corpse general ants. And the first batch of corpse general ants from the day before had grown to 3 times their original size. On the third day, the corpse general ants gave birth to another 100 corpse general ants. And the first 10 corpse general ants were now fully grown. They were the size of a house cat. It only took 3 days for a corpse ant to fully mature from its birth to maturity. This speed was unparalleled. Then, after another 7 days, he finally gave birth to 1,000 corpse general ants. This reproduction speed was already very fast. But Emosher felt that it was not enough. 10 days to give birth to 1,000. Then wouldn't it take 100 days to give birth to 10,000? Where did he have that much time? Fortunately, the corpse general ant queen's body suddenly began to change. Its skin began to turn white. Then, the skin on its back split open. Its entire body drilled out of the skin with difficulty. This process took half a day. Finally, when it drilled out, its body began to grow rapidly. In just half an hour, it reached 200 meters. And the white skin from before gradually hardened, forming a white empty shell. So this guy was molting. At this moment, Emosher used the demon dragon's eyes to look at it. Species, corpse general ant queen, Level 2 evolved beast, skill. Production, it turned out that after eating enough meat, it leveled up after shedding its skin. Then, it quickly began to devour the corpse of the giant beast in front of it. Its frequency was faster, and each time it tore off a larger chunk of flesh. It only took half a minute for the 100-meter-long beast to finish eating. However, he still felt that this was not enough. Emosher used his dragon will to control another 5 giant beasts. After swallowing all 5 beasts, the corpse ant queen was finally satisfied. It began to exert itself. Soon, a corpse ant egg rolled out from under its abdomen. 1, 2, 3, 10, 20, 30. It wasn't until the 100th one that it finally stopped producing. Seeing this, Emosher was overjoyed. Good housework, directly laying 100 eggs in one go. Wouldn't she be able to lay thousands of eggs in a day? 10,000 pills in 10 days? In fact, the corpse general ant queen had produced more corpse general ants than Emosher had expected. On the second day, it produced 1,300 corpse general ant eggs. In just a little more than 5 days, it had produced 9,000 eggs. In addition to the 1,000 corpse general ants from before, Emosher now had an army of 10,000 corpse general ants. However, this was still far from enough. He used his dragon will to investigate. At this time, there was nothing left in the 1,000 Poisons Ridge. Previously, in the 1,000 Poisons Ridge, there was a large number of corpse general ants. Since he had destroyed the corpse general ants, there was naturally nothing left. However, according to his investigation, there was a large mountain about 300 kilometers to the east of the 1,000 Poisons Ridge. On this mountain, there was a group of corpse general tigers. This group of corpse general tigers had about 3,000 of them. For the 10,000 corpse general ants, it was considered a lot. Mosher immediately put these 10,000 corpse general ants into Earth space. Then, with a teleport, he arrived at the mountain more than 300 kilometers away. This mountain was not as big as the Thousand Poisons Ridge. However, there were many species in it. There were also many corpse general beasts. Small groups had about 10 to 20 of them, while large groups had hundreds to thousands of them. Among them, the largest group was the corpse general tiger group. Mosher did not attack these half-corpse tigers immediately. Instead, he found a small group of about 20 corpse general beasts. Each of these corpse general beasts was about 100 meters long. For the 10,000 corpse general ants, it was more than enough. Mosher used his mind, and the dragon binding rope emerged from the ground. The blood-red dragon binding rope split into more than 20 ropes and tied up all the corpse general beasts. Then, he placed corpse general ants around them. The corpse general ants quickly climbed onto the bodies of these corpse general beasts and began to bite them. The corpse general ant queen was bitten even faster. In just 1 minute, 3 corpse general beasts were eaten. Mosher watched as the corpse general beast's skin was bitten open, revealing the flesh inside. Then, the flesh was continuously devoured until only the bones were left. In the end, even the bones were devoured. He was also secretly shocked in his heart. A single corpse general ant was very small. However, once a certain number of them reached a certain level, the corpse general ants were truly terrifying. It was no wonder that the 10 million corpse general ants could run rampant in the Thousand Poisons Ridge for tens of thousands of years. This was not without reason. After devouring these corpse general beasts, the corpse general ant queen laid eggs twice in just 10 minutes. Each time, it laid 100 eggs, no less, no less. Then, Mosher went to the next group of corpse general beasts. In this way, in just 10 days, the corpse general ant colony had reached more than 20,000. At this time, the corpse general ant shed its skin again. After shedding its skin, its body length had reached 300 meters. At this moment, if it had enough food, it could lay at most 1,000 eggs at a time. At most, it could lay 10,000 eggs a day. As long as it followed Mosher, it did not have to worry about not having enough food. In another short 8 days, it laid another 80,000 eggs. At this point, the total number of corpse general ants had reached 100,000. It had finally reached a certain level. Moreover, the corpse general ant queen, which had become a level 3 super evolved corpse general beast, could now directly produce aerial troops. However, if it were to produce aerial troops, it could only produce 1,000 of them each day. Mosher spent a day to make it produce 1,000 flying troops. In this way, Mosher did not have to take the initiative to find food for these corpse general ants. This was because these aerial troops could take advantage of the time when the corpse general beasts were not in their nests to steal their young. Due to the low probability of many aerial beasts reaching adulthood, they would lay hundreds of eggs each time. The number of hatchlings that had just hatched reached hundreds. This became the target of the corpse general ants. Chapter 5:33. With the flying corpse general ants, it was much more convenient. Mosher scouted the nest first, and found out which of the adult zombie beasts had left. Then, he let the flying corpse general ants easily bring the chicks back for the other corpse general ants to use. The chances of the corpse general birds successfully reaching adulthood were very small. Therefore, they usually laid a large number of eggs. This was definitely beneficial to Mosher. The flying corpse general ants only needed to search one nest, and they would be able to find dozens of flying corpse general beasts. Although these corpse general birds were only chicks, they could reach about 5 meters in size. Dozens of them were enough to feed the corpse general ants. On the second and third days, the corpse general ant queen laid another 1,000 flying corpse general ants. At this time, the number of flying corpse general ants had reached 3,000. At the same time, the corpse general birds had also discovered the scourge of the corpse general ants. They began to gather together and formed a large flock of corpse general birds. When they flew over, they covered the sky and covered the earth. It was like a huge dark cloud. When this dark cloud flew over, the forest below would be plunged into darkness. Their momentum was great, and their aura was high. They kept on chirping. Their chirping was hoarse and unpleasant. The hiss hiss hiss, rustle rustle, hiss, meow, hiss. Wherever they passed, the corpse general beasts in the forest below all hid in their caves. At this time, Emosher looked at the corpse general birds flying over and smiled calmly. Soon, when the dark cloud covered the top of his head, Emosher's dragon telekinesis moved. All the tens of thousands of corpse general birds seemed to have suddenly lost their strength as they fell from the sky while shrieking. Tens of thousands of corpse general birds that were hundreds of meters long fell from the sky. It was a spectacular scene. In the forest below, the sound of trees breaking could be heard. Plop, plop, plop. In the lake below, huge waves that were hundreds of meters high kept splashing. The corpse general fish in the lake were so shocked that they kept on jumping around. Soon, the forest within a radius of tens of kilometers was smashed into a mess by the tens of thousands of corpse general birds that fell from the sky. Only then did Emosher issue an order to the corpse ant queen. "Let's go." The corpse ant queen raised its huge head, and the sickles in its mouth continuously struck each other. At the same time, a strange sound came out of his mouth. When the corpse general ants heard the voice and the command, they were so excited that their eyes lit up. The meaning of this command was, dry rice, they squeaked in response, and then quickly rushed toward the corpse birds. Tens of thousands of corpse general ants instantly crawled all over the body of a corpse general bird. After a series of miserable shrieks, the corpse-holding bird fell silent. 5 minutes later, when he looked at the corpse bird again, not even its bones were left. More than 100,000 corpse general ants devoured 10 corpse general birds in just 5 minutes. The corpse ant queen was even more terrifying. Its eating speed was simply too fast. Emosher really couldn't figure it out. Its small mouth and pair of sides made it seem very inconvenient for it to eat. However, it was able to kill 5 corpse birds in just 1 minute. This speed of eating was truly a little abnormal. The corpse general birds looked at the torrent of corpse general ants rushing toward them. They climbed up their bodies. However, they couldn't move at all. They could only let out despairing and miserable shrieks. However, some beasts just screamed and died. When the nearby corpse general beasts heard the shrieks, they were so scared that they hid in their caves, not daring to show their faces. When they saw the flock of corpse general birds flying across the sky, they were scared out of their wits. They didn't expect that in the blink of an eye, these seemingly powerful corpse general birds would become meat in their stomachs. This showed how terrifying the corpse general ants were. Just like that, 10 days passed in the blink of an eye. In these 10 days, Emosher didn't let the ant queen produce any more flying soldiers. The number of corpse general ants was still too low. He let the ant queen produce 10,000 corpse general ants every day and quickly expand their numbers. This was the most important thing to do now. 10 days later, the number of corpse general ants had reached a terrifying 200,000. The 200,000 corpse general ants' eating speed was twice as fast as before. After another 5 days, they finished eating all the corpse general birds. Next, they began to sweep the entire mountain. It took them another 10 days to clean up the entire mountain. At this time, the number of ordinary corpse general ants had reached 300,000. There were also 5,000 flying corpse general ants. Emosher looked at this number and felt slightly satisfied. The only thing that made him feel a little regretful was that the killing speed of the corpse general ants was still too slow. He needed to reach the size of 10 million in order to increase the killing speed. Only then would he be able to gain kill points faster. Therefore, the corpse general ant queen had a long way to go. Thinking about it, the previous corpse general ant colony had only reached 10 million after tens of thousands of years. In less than 2 months, the number of corpse general ant queens had reached 300,000. In fact, this speed of development was already fast enough. At this time, Emosher led the army of 300,000 corpse general ants forward in the forest. Everywhere they passed, the corpse general beasts were unable to escape from his demonic claws. However, Emosher felt a little regretful that the number of corpse general beasts in the forest was not large enough. At most, there were a few dozen to 100. It was rare to see 1,000 corpse general beasts, let alone tens of thousands. Thinking about it, these corpse general beasts were all over 100 meters tall. Their appetite was even more shocking. If their numbers were too large, they would probably all starve to death. Emosher could only temporarily decide on a direction, southwest. There was a small town there. He estimated that there were about 10,000 corpse general beasts in this small town. Actually, these corpse general beasts were innocent. The ones who had truly invaded the flame-beginning continent and turned it into hell were the corpse general beasts. Therefore, Emosher's true target for revenge should be these corpse general beasts. After 10 days, when they were about to reach the small town called Sagwa, the number of corpse general ants had reached 400,000. On this day, they finally walked out of the forest. They were only 50 kilometers away from the small town. Emosher estimated in his mind. 400,000 corpse general ants should be enough to deal with 10,000 corpse general beasts. Therefore, with a thought, he put these corpse general ants into Earth's space. At the same time, in the small town of Sagwa, a patrolling soldier came to report to the mayor. Not good, a large number of corpse general beasts are heading towards Sagwa. The mayor was puzzled. Although there were not many corpse general beasts in Sagwa, the defense outside was extremely strong. Ordinary corpse general beasts did not dare to approach. This was also why Sagwa, with only 10,000 corpse general beasts, could stand at the edge of the forest for tens of thousands of years. Why would corpse general beasts suddenly come? They couldn't be that stupid, right? Chapter 5:34. Sagwa town was located 50 kilometers south of the forest by a small river. There were only 10,000 general corpse generals in the town. Of course, it was still much bigger than those general corpse tribes. Moreover, because the general corpse generals were larger in size, the town was also very big. If a human came here, they would probably think that it was a big city. Sagwa town's defense was extremely strong. With their defense, super-evolved general corpse beasts below the 5th rank would not be able to break through. In the entire forest, super-evolved general corpse beasts above the 5th rank were extremely rare. Moreover, those general corpse beasts were in the depths of the forest and occupied the best resources. They would not leave the forest. Only those weaker general corpse beasts would be pushed to the outskirts of the forest. They would not even go out of the forest to look for food. That was why Sagwa town was able to stand at the edge of the forest for over 10,000 years. At this moment, the mayor heard the report from the patrol and asked, "Can you find out what kind of general corpse beasts are coming?" The patrol shook his head and said, "It's too far, I can't see clearly. But I can see that there are a lot of them, maybe more than 10,000. Because each general corpse ant was not big, only the size of a house cat. But ordinary general corpse beasts were around 100 meters tall. Therefore, when the patrolling soldier looked from afar, he estimated that the 300,000 corpse commander ants were only 10,000 based on the dust raised by the corpse commander beasts. When the mayor heard that it was only 10,000 general corpse beasts, his expression relaxed. He waved his hand and said to the patrol, "Investigate more. See what kind of general corpse beasts it is, so that we can find the most suitable way to deal with them." Then, the mayor went to the window and looked at the towering mountain in the distance. He said, "There are many general corpse beasts in this forest. But they usually move alone. It is very rare to see a group of over 1,000. I have only seen 3 groups of over 10,000 in my life. What I can be sure of is that the larger the number, the weaker their individual combat strength. It can be seen how weak the individual combat strength of 10,000 general corpse beasts is. The method to deal with such a group of general corpse beasts is very simple. We need to show off their weaknesses and avoid their strengths. We just need to divide them into several large areas. Divide them into a dozen or even dozens of small groups, and you can easily defeat them one by one." The attendant nodded his head. "Lord Mayor is wise. The mayor continued, "Go and prepare." The lackey nodded. "Yes, mayor." Very quickly, the 10,000 general corpses in Sagwa town entered a busy state. They quickly pushed out thousands of huge metal frames that were more than 5 meters tall. These metal racks were about 50 meters wide and 500 meters tall. It was large at the bottom and small at the top. Its two sides were wrapped tightly in metal, and there were many large metal spikes on it. The shelves were filled with heavy stones. At the top, there was a metal plate that looked like a passageway. When these shelves were connected together, they formed a solid and thick wall. The general corps could still walk on top of the roof. Under the mayor's command, the corps generals connected the racks into several pocket formations. In this way, they could use these pocket formations to separate the corpse beasts. The general corpse beasts would be able to surround and attack the general corpse beasts from the top of the high wall. The mayor stood on the top of the high wall and issued a pre-war mobilization. Last time, the higher-ups selected soldiers to attack that flaming initial continent. Aren't you regretful that you weren't selected? Now, there is an opportunity in front of you. This time, when the general corpse beasts attack, if any of you perform outstandingly in battle and kill the top 10 enemies, I can recommend you to become a soldier. When the general corpse generals heard this, their eyes lit up. They were pleasantly surprised. Roar, roar, roar. They roared in unison. None of them wanted to stay in this place for the rest of their lives. They were youths with dreams and ambitions. But without a special opportunity, they could only stay in Sagwa town for the rest of their lives. This was the law of the general corpse world. But if they became soldiers, they would have the chance to go to other places. They would have the chance to make a name for themselves. They might even have the chance to invade that weak flaming initial continent. As long as they could go to the flaming initial continent, it would be a chance for any general corpse to make a name for themselves. At the same time, it would be a great opportunity to make a fortune. The mayor raised his hand and continued to speak passionately. He said, "Therefore, all of you brave potential warriors, all of you, fight with all your might. Chase after your life's dream and win a beautiful tomorrow for all of you." One had to admit that the mayor was an expert at cooking chicken soup. When the general corpse generals heard this, they all raised their fists and roared at the sky. Roar, 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 roar. However, while dreams were beautiful, reality was not necessarily as the general corpse generals wanted. Just as they got into formation and were in high spirits, the corpse general beast in the distance suddenly stopped moving. After waiting for about 20 minutes, there was still no sign of the general corpse beasts. The mayor called the patrolling soldier over and asked, "Did you find any traces of the general corpse beasts?" The patrolling soldier smiled bitterly and said, "That group of general corpse beasts suddenly disappeared." The mayor narrowed his eyes and turned to look at the patrolling soldier. "Disappeared? What do you mean?" The patrolling soldier replied, They disappeared." The mayor's eyes narrowed into slits. "I'm not asking what you mean." Hearing this, the patrolling soldier trembled slightly. The narrower the mayor's eyes were, the angrier he was. And when the mayor was extremely angry, he would swear. He continued to explain, "That is, there was a large amount of smoke and dust that they kicked up earlier. From the observation mirror, I could see countless black general corpse beasts at the front. They seemed to be general ants. But suddenly, the general corpse beasts disappeared. It was as if something had suddenly taken them away." Hearing this, the mayor's squinted eyes opened slightly. He looked at the distant horizon, at the faintly discernible smoke and dust that was about to disappear. His expression became much more serious. He had been the mayor of Sagwa town for over 200 years. During this time, he had encountered at least 80, if not 100, attacks from general corpse beasts. But he had never encountered such a strange situation. As far as he knew, there were no general corpse beasts that were capable of invisibility or spatial skills. If what the patrolling soldier said was true, then there must be some unknown secret behind this. At this moment, he suddenly felt that something was wrong. He abruptly raised his head and looked at the sky. In the sky, there was a human with wings condensed from energy on his back. He was quietly floating there. Chapter 5:35. When the mayor looked up, he saw a human with a pair of wings condensed from blood-red energy in the sky. This human was dressed in black and was quietly observing them from the sky. The mayor immediately felt a chill run down his spine, and his hair stood on end. His sparse beard was no longer fluttering in the wind. Instead, it was standing up. A chill ran down his spine from the soles of his feet. It traveled along his legs to his torso, and finally to his brain. It made him feel so cold from the bottom to the top. He could not help but tremble slightly. Imagine if you were doing your own thing and suddenly felt that something was wrong. When you looked up, you would find someone quietly floating in the sky, watching you. And it seemed that he had been floating there for a long time. Are you scared? The other General Corps generals followed the mayor's gaze and looked up at the sky. With one look, they also felt a chill from the bottom of their hearts. Especially when the guy in the sky was a human. This caused them to be even more terrified. How could there be a human in their General Corps world? This did not make sense at all. It was like one day, when you looked up, you suddenly found an ant quietly floating in the sky with a cold face, quietly watching you. Are you scared? But in addition to the fear, they were also a little angry. In their eyes, humans were weak and could not withstand a single blow. And now, this mere human had suddenly appeared here, giving them a fright. Moreover, he was looking at them with a look of contempt. How could they not be angry? The mayor's eyes were already narrowed in anger. He shouted, "Kill this human, and you can become a warrior." For a human to suddenly appear in the General Corps world, this matter must be very strange. If they could capture or kill this human, they would definitely be rewarded greatly. Then, becoming a warrior would no longer be an extravagant hope. As for why the General Corps generals of the tribes did not have such awareness, this was because the General Corps generals of the tribes were like the natives living in the Amazon jungle on Earth. They were completely separated from the General Corps generals of these towns, which was equivalent to two completely different General Corps generals. At this moment, the General Corps generals were instantly provoked by the mayor's words. They slowly let out beast-like roars. Black veins bulged on their right arms. A cracking sound came from his right arm. Then, the bones in their right arms began to grow rapidly. Sharp bone spikes grew out of it. The bone spikes pierced through the skin of their right hands and grew rapidly. In the end, it grew into a spear. These general corpses were basically 200 to 300 meters tall. The spears they condensed were more than 10 meters thick and more than 500 meters long. Following this, the tens of thousands of general corpses all threw their 500-meter-long spears at Mo. However, when their spears were less than 100 meters away from Mo, a strange scene occurred. Their spears suddenly stopped in midair, as if they were blocked by an invisible hand. Then they fell to the ground one after another. All the corps generals were shocked. How could this human be so strong? What they had learned since they were young was that humans were weak, very weak. They could stomp him to death with a single stomp. However, the human in front of them was stronger than they had imagined. He had blocked the bone spears of over 10,000 general corpses by himself. This was truly too shocking for him. Then he roared at all the general corpses, "Attack with all your might." What he meant by attacking with all their might was that all the general corpses should use their ultimate moves right away. They should not hold back at all. Of course, the general corpses' ultimate moves would take a bit longer. Therefore, 5,000 general corpses planned to use their ultimate moves. The remaining 5,000 general corpses were ready to defend themselves. They could not allow these general corpses' ultimate moves to be interrupted. However, at this moment, the human in the sky who had been in a state of stillness all this time suddenly moved. However, this movement was not big. He only waved his right hand slightly. In the next moment, a large black mass of things suddenly appeared in the sky. When these things appeared, they almost instantly covered the entire Sagwa town. The town instantly became somewhat dark. In the next moment, these 300,000 general corpses descended from the sky. This unforeseen event came too suddenly, and the general corpses were completely unprepared. The 300,000 general corpses descended from the sky and quickly began to devour any living thing they could see. They devoured the general corpses raised by the general corpses. In less than 10 seconds, those general corpses slowly became skeletons. After a while, not even the skeletons were left. A few general corpses descended from the sky and landed on a general corpses. In almost an instant, the general corpse's head was bitten and bloody wounds appeared. He kept screaming, trying to kill these general corpses. However, these general corpses had extremely tenacious vitality. It looked like they had been slapped flat, but when the corpse commander ants removed their hands, these corpse commander ants were like inflated balloons as they quickly swelled up. At the same time, hundreds of general corpses landed on this general corpses. They kept biting and tearing at his body. Horrifying wounds that were so deep that bones could be seen quickly appeared on his body. In less than a minute, this general corpses was gnawed until only bones were left. His horrified screams also disappeared. At the same time, a similar scene was happening in every corner of Sagwa town. The entire Sagwa town reeked of blood. If one looked down from the sky, this place no longer looked like a peaceful town. Instead, it looked like a slaughterhouse in hell. How could 10,000 general corpses withstand the attack of 300,000 general corpses? Moreover, these general corpses were organized and disciplined. This was even more incredible. A rain of general corpses fell from the sky. A dark red mist of blood floated up from Sagwa town. Emosher watched as his kill points continued to increase. His face was expressionless. These general corpses' dream was to become warriors and invade the flaming continent. Then they would not have to blame themselves for their deaths. Emosher would not have the slightest bit of pity for them. At the same time, the smell of blood had already drifted to the forest in the distance. In the forest, the thousands of general corpses all roared excitedly when they smelled the smell of blood. Emosher was a little surprised when he heard the roars. However, he quickly came back to his senses. If the smell of blood could attract more general corpses after killing these general corpses, it would be killing two birds with one stone. As expected, when the last general corpses were killed, a group of general corpses had already kicked up a cloud of dust in the distant sky. Chapter 5:36. Actually, using 300,000 corpse general ants to attack 10,000 corpse general ants was a risky move. After all, the corpse general ants were not as brainless as the corpse general beasts. Moreover, the corpse general ants had many skills and their ultimate moves as a foundation. However, Emosher was in charge of the overall situation. Wherever the corpse general ants could not handle, he would lend a helping hand. This allowed the 300,000 corpse general ants to easily take care of 10,000 corpse general ants. At this moment, a cloud of dust rose from the ground in the distance. Emosher's draconic perception enveloped the area and discovered that thousands of corpse general beasts were charging towards them. Moreover, these corpse general beasts were not of low levels. They were basically super-evolved corpse general beasts. Emosher probed for a moment and discovered that the number of these corpse beast commanders reached a total of 50,000. They must have been attracted by the smell of the corpse general beast's blood. After all, the corpse general ants love to eat corpse general beasts. However, the defenses here were too strong and they could not break in. Now that they smelled such a strong smell of blood, they knew that something must have happened to the corpse general beasts in Sagwa town. Emosher looked at the corpse general beasts rolling towards him like a flood. Not only did he not panic, but he was also delighted. Slaughtering a corpse general town had attracted 50,000 corpse general beasts. This was a pleasant surprise. Soon, the corpse general beasts arrived outside the town. However, there was a pocket formation set up outside the town. These corpse general beasts were naturally divided into hundreds of small groups. Each group only had about 500 corpse general beasts. Emosher moved the metal racks with his mind and sealed all the pockets in the pocket formation. Then he threw 300,000 corpse general ants into one of the pockets. How could 500 corpse general beasts withstand the bites of 300,000 corpse general ants? In a short 5 minutes, They were completely devoured by the 300,000 corpse general ants. Then, the corpse general ants crawled to the next pocket. As for the corpse general ant queen, Emosure specially left an empty pocket for her. The corpse general ants would naturally cut the dead corpse general beasts into small pieces and send them to the corpse general ant queen. As the corpse general ants ate, they also laid eggs. When the sky turned dark, the 50,000 corpse general beasts had all been cleared out. The entire Sagwa town had long been enveloped in the thick smell of blood. The corpse ants ate until their stomachs were bloated. On that day, the corpse general ant queen gave birth to another 1,000 flying corpse general ants. Now that the number of corpse general ants had begun to take shape, it wouldn't be a problem to slaughter these small towns. What Emosure needed now were aerial troops. At this moment, he looked at the kill points in his mind. This time, the massacre of Sagwa town had earned him more than 6 trillion kill points. It was really worth it. Of course, it was still much less than the 10,000 trillion required to level up. But it didn't matter, there were countless small towns in the general corpse world. As long as he slaughtered a few more towns, he would be able to level up again very quickly. After that, Emosure kept the corpse commander ants into Earth's space. His figure flashed and he disappeared. The next moment, he appeared above another small town more than 800 kilometers away. There were more than 10,000 general corpses in this town. Night had just fallen. The corpse generals of this small town had just returned from their work in the fields and were currently sitting around a bonfire. They sang, danced, rapped, and played a ball game. But it was definitely not a basketball game. This place was already far away from the forest, so it was basically impossible for a large number of corpse general beasts to come here. So there weren't even any patrolling soldiers in the town. Everyone was very relaxed. Emosure moved his mind and more than 300,000 corpse general ants were thrown down from the sky. A moment later, screams, shouts, cries, and curses were heard. An hour later, these sounds gradually disappeared. Emosure's kill points had increased by more than 1 trillion. Emosure teleported again and arrived at another small town hundreds of kilometers away. At this moment, many of the corpse general ants in this small town had already fallen asleep. Emosure still threw down the corpse general ants. An hour later, he gained another 1 trillion kill points. Just like this, Emosure continued to slaughter these small towns day after day. His kill points kept increasing. At the same time, the number of corpse general ants kept increasing. Gradually, the total number of corpse general ants reached over 500,000. Among them, the number of flying corpse general ants had also reached 50,000. And Emosure's kill points had also reached 5,000 trillion. As long as he continued for a while, he would be able to level up again. At the same time, in Naten Prefecture's capital city, Naten City. These were the hundreds of small towns within 100,000 kilometers of Naten Prefecture. As for Naten City, it was the largest city within a radius of 100,000 kilometers. The number of corpse general ants living here was close to 1 million. But because the distance between the small towns was too far, and the technology of the corpse general ants was not that advanced, communication was inconvenient. So it wasn't until today that the master of Naten City received the news that several towns had been massacred. At this moment, the princess frowned slightly. She said to a strategist beside her, "What do you think about the massacring of many small towns?" That strategist replied, "It must be a group of people with average strength and numbers." Why? The princess's right finger kept drawing on her eyebrows as she asked. That strategist said, "Because they only dared to attack those remote towns. They didn't dare to get too close to our Naten City. I think it's very likely that they were fugitives who had escaped into the forest in the past. As time passed, their numbers increased. So they started to come out and rob these small towns." The princess pondered for a moment and nodded, Your guess is correct." Then she called in a warrior. She said, "I'll give you 50,000 men. You have 1 month to find out the whereabouts of those bandits and eliminate them in one fell swoop." Hearing this, the warrior was instantly overjoyed. This meant that the princess was promoting him. Although those bandits were fugitives, they were also a motley crew. In front of these trained warriors, they were completely vulnerable. Moreover, the princess had given him 50,000 warriors. This was a perfect opportunity for him to earn credit for himself. As long as he seized this opportunity, his promotion was basically set in stone. Thinking of this, he quickly bowed to the princess. "Thank you, princess." So, early the next morning, this warrior led 50,000 warriors and rode on a corpse general ant that was more than 400 meters long toward the border of Naten Prefecture. Finally, after 3 days, they had already investigated a few small towns. Based on the tracks of these towns' destruction, they had a rough idea of Emosher's route. Thus, they predicted that the next town that those bandits would destroy was Viler Town. They had set up an ambush in Viler Town in advance, waiting for the bandits to arrive. Chapter 537. That afternoon, the sky in the west was crimson. The rare sunset glow dyed the entire Viler Town crimson. The general corpses in the town all had smiles on their faces that had not appeared for a long time. These days they had heard rumors. They said that a group of bandits kept slaughtering the nearby towns. Everywhere they passed, there was not a town that was not slaughtered. Moreover, this group of bandits came and went without a trace. Therefore, it had already caused a certain amount of panic. Fortunately, the princess had sent people today. And it was 50,000 soldiers. These 50,000 soldiers were already lying in ambush around the town. This made the townspeople feel much more at ease. If those bandits dared to attack Viler Town, they would definitely not be able to return. Therefore, the townspeople of Viler Town, who had been nervous for so many days, could finally relax today. At this moment, the soldier hidden in the dark, Babu, looked at the setting sun on the horizon. He had already waited for a day. According to the time, that group of bandits should have appeared. He could not help but grip the long sword at his waist tightly. This was the best opportunity to make a name for himself. At the same time, Emosher quietly appeared in the sky. He scanned with his dragon will and detected the appearance of the 50,000 soldiers. The corner of his mouth could not help but curl into a smile. Just as he was complaining that this way of earning kill points was not fast enough, they sent 50,000 kill points over. It was really timely help. Then, with a move of his dragon will, he instantly controlled the 50,000 soldiers. These general corpses' self-healing abilities were extremely strong. Although his dragon will could not kill them, he could control them. Then, he threw the 500,000 general corpse ants to the ground. A general corpse had just picked up a skewer of barbecued meat and was about to eat it. Suddenly, something fell on this piece of barbecued meat. Then, it quickly climbed onto his hand. Then, a piercing pain came from his finger. Ah! He screamed and hurriedly raised his left hand to slap that thing. But in the next moment, a piercing pain came from his left hand. Then his neck, ears, arms, and nose were covered with general corpse ants. A piercing pain came from everywhere. At the same time, the general corpses around him also screamed. When they raised their heads, they saw a dense rain of general corpse ants falling from the sky. Faced with the sudden appearance of tens of thousands of corpse general ants, they simply had no way to deal with them. They wanted to escape the town. However, they discovered that there seemed to be an invisible wall around the town, blocking them inside. No matter how much strength they used, they were unable to break through the wall. Finally, with a miserable shriek, one of the corpse generals fell to the ground. A moment later, only a skeleton was left. More than 10 seconds later, even the bones had disappeared. Then the second, the third, the fourth, countless corpse commander ants fell from the sky. The commander corpses fell to the ground one by one, and were devoured clean one after another. When the soldiers hiding in the dark saw this scene, they were all terrified. Previously, they had thought that they were facing a motley crew. They never expected that they would be facing hundreds of thousands of corpse general ants. If that was the case, they could still fight and think of a way to escape. However, the most terrifying thing was that they were unable to move at all. They could only watch as the corpse commander ants devoured the townspeople. Moreover, it was obvious that they had been discovered. Then they were bound by some kind of enemy skill. Otherwise, they would not be unable to move at all. In other words, after the corpse general ants devoured the townspeople, their next target would be the 50,000 corpse commander warriors. In fact, they were right. After the corpse general ants devoured the townspeople, they leaped into the forest and began to devour the corpse commander warriors who could not move at all. In the sky, Missouri sure watched all of this with indifference, without the slightest bit of pity in his heart. 2 hours later, all of the townspeople had been devoured. Mo sure led the 500,000 corpse general ants to the next location. A day later, in Naten City, the princess looked at the sky in the west and asked the servant beside her, "Is there still no news from Babu?" Previously, he had instructed Babu to send a bird message 3 times a day to report back to him. However, an entire day had passed, and there was not even a single bird message. The servant nodded. "Yes." The princess frowned slightly and said, "There must be a problem. Send a small team to investigate and have them report back as soon as possible." The servant hurriedly nodded. "Yes, princess." In the following days, Mo sure continued to massacre the townspeople. The people the princess sent out to investigate returned with more and more information that made the princess more and more alarmed. "All of the townspeople of Will Town have disappeared, and there is no trace of Babu. All of the townspeople of Skoda Town have disappeared, and there is no trace of Babu. All of the townspeople of Naris Town have disappeared, and there is no trace of Babu." Of course, the letter said disappeared and not died. However, the tracking team sent by the princess showed that these people were definitely dead. This was because the ground of all the towns where the townspeople had disappeared was dyed dark red with blood. Other than the lack of corpses, everything else showed that there had been a massacre here. This made the princess more and more alarmed. The most frightening thing was that based on the location of the massacred towns, the bandits were heading towards Naten City. Although there were still 50,000 soldiers and 400,000 general corpses in the city. But with the strength of these bandits, Naten City would not be able to withstand them. By now, he already knew that these fellows were not simple thieves. As for what they were, he could not say for sure. He could only do his best to set up defenses in the city. Fortunately, there was still the corpse ancestor in the city, which made him feel slightly more at ease. The corpse ancestor was an existence that was stronger than the super-evolved general corpses. No matter how strong the enemies were, they could not be stronger than the corpse ancestor. Therefore, other than restricting the general corpses in the city from going out, he did not need to do anything. He just needed to wait for those guys to arrive. On this day, the number of general corpses under Mo Sher's command had reached 900,000. The kill points in his mind had reached 9,960 trillion. He was only 40 trillion away from leveling up again. He looked straight ahead at the majestic city wall on the horizon. That was Naten City, the main city of the entire Naten City. At that time, there were 400,000 general corpses. It was just enough to reach 10,000 trillion kill points. This made Mo Sher slightly excited. However, he was still slightly worried about one thing. According to the current situation, after reaching the 7th level, if he wanted to level up again, he would need to kill 1 billion general corpses or general corpses. Based on the current situation of the continent of general corpses, although there were many general corpses in the continent of general corpses, reaching trillions. However, they lived very far apart. The city with the largest number of general corpses only had about 10 million. There were only 4 such cities in the world. It would be difficult to kill 1 billion. As expected, the kill points system was going to collapse. Chapter 5:38. There were more than 400,000 general corpses in Rutten City. After slaughtering all of them, he would be able to collect the 10,000 trillion kill points needed for his advancement. Mo Sher didn't care whether the system's kill points system would break down or not. He would think about it after he advanced to rank 7. Thinking of this, his figure flashed and he appeared above Rutten City. At this time, in the princess residence in Rutten City, the princess and a group of strategists were in the meeting hall. The princess didn't look good, and the strategists didn't dare to look good either. The princess first coughed a few times and coughed out a mouthful of phlegm in her throat. Then she said in a low voice, "Those bandits still haven't been caught. Not only have we not caught them, we haven't even seen them. We only know that wherever they go, they will massacre the entire city." She could be so vicious and merciless, and she could also appear and disappear like a ghost. "Tell me, all of you who are experienced and knowledgeable. Who are they?" The strategist thought for a moment and said, "Princess, I heard that there are mountain elves in the forest. Could it be the mountain elves causing trouble?" As soon as this was said, a few of the strategist's expressions changed slightly. Mountain elves were legendary evil creatures in the world of general corpses. In layman's terms, they were evil spirits in the mountains. They had once caused a riot in the world of general corpses. It was a riot of a very large scale. It lasted for more than 20 years. More than 300 million people participated in the rebellion. After the Corpse King quelled the riot, he ordered several generals to lead millions of soldiers and escort the tens of millions of surrendered general corpses into the 10,000 Poisons Ridge in the forest. It was said that after the generals outside the 10,000 Poisons Ridge drove the general corpses in, they heard screams in the 10,000 Poisons Ridge for 7 days and 7 nights. The generals and soldiers felt their scalps go numb. They didn't sleep for 7 days and 7 nights. After 7 days and 7 nights, the 10,000 Poisons Ridge suddenly fell into a dead silence. There was no more sound. The general corpses waited for 2 more days. Seeing that no rebels escaped, they left the 10,000 Poisons Ridge. But after they returned, all the generals died within 7 days. All of the more than 1 million soldiers died within 7 days. Not only them, but even their families and friends who came into contact with them during these 7 days, including the king at the time, all died. Even 3 of the new kings had died in a row. Whoever becomes king dies. In the past, it was the brothers and fathers who fought to be the king. In order to become the king, they didn't hesitate to kill their father and brothers. But at that time, none of the king's sons wanted to be king. For the sake of the king, they did not hesitate to run away from home. They even dressed up as beggars and escaped from the city. At that time, the entire General Corpse Kingdom was in a state of panic. Later on, he heard from a necromancer that the 10 million corpses that had died in the myriad Poisons Ridge had transformed into mountain elves to cause trouble. After more than 20 days, no more people died suddenly. But even so, no one was willing to be king. The current king was only a 5-year-old child at that time. In his confusion, he was helped up to the throne by a group of officials. Of course, this was something that happened nearly 1,000 years ago. It was said that after the king came of age, he destroyed all the history books about this incident. Nowadays, people only pass down such stories through word of mouth. As for whether the story was true or not, only the king would know. The princess frowned. If it really was a mandrill, then they would be in big trouble. Of course, there were also strategists who objected. No one knows whether the mandrill story is true or not. And according to my years of research, it's a superstition, because there's no evidence to prove what happened back then. A strategist shook his head. It's better to believe it than not. As the saying goes, there's no smoke without fire. Even if what happened back then wasn't as horrifying and tragic as the legends say, it must have happened. Some strategists believed that this matter was true, while others thought that it was false. The two sides quarreled. In the end, the princess spoke. Regardless of whether this is true or not, the destruction of so many towns has already exceeded the scope of our abilities. We must report to the governor as soon as possible. Immediately send out a messenger to report this matter to the prefecture city. Yes, I'll do it right away, one of the strategists said and quickly retreated. However, just as he walked out of the meeting hall, suddenly, something landed on his shoulder. He turned his head and saw that it was a corpse general ant that was not even the size of his finger. He did not care at all. In the Flaming Dawn continent, corpse general ants were very common. They were just like ants on Earth. However, there were not many corpse general ants, and they did not cause much harm. Therefore, he did not care at all. The strategist was about to stretch out his finger and crush the corpse general ant to death. But at this moment, the corpse general ant suddenly jumped up and bit the back of the strategist's hand. Immediately, a bloody wound that was so deep that bone could be seen appeared on the back of the strategist's hand. Looking at the ghastly white bone in the wound, the strategist was shocked. But before he could react, a second, a third, a 10th, hundreds of corpse general ants landed on his head. Hiss, hiss, hiss. A single bite from each corpse commander ant would leave behind hundreds of bloody wounds. Ah, the strategist let out a scream. He wanted to run and call for help. But soon, he was horrified to find that he could not move. Not to mention his feet, he could not even move his fingers, or even his eyes. Soon, in just 10 seconds, half of him was bitten. In the meeting hall, the strategists heard the scream and rushed out one by one. At this moment, the scene they saw made them all suck in a breath of cold air. The strategist who had just walked out was still standing, but the upper half of his body had been bitten into bones. The lower half of his body was still being bitten. It was not just the strategist. In the sky, countless black corpse general ants were like black rain, rapidly falling down. After landing, they quickly surrounded the corpse general ants. Those corpse general ants were also bitten into bones. Even the bones had been gnawed clean. At this moment, the strategists and the princess finally understood. These were not mandrill, but corpse general ants. Corpse general ants fell from the sky. Tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of corpse general ants. Resist! Resist! The princess gave a powerless order. But at this moment, all the corpse general ants could not even take care of themselves. How could they resist? Amidst her terror, the princess would occasionally raise her head to take a look. She would suddenly feel extremely terrified. This was because he seemed to have seen a figure in the gaps between the densely packed corpse general ants that were falling down. That figure was not a corpse general. It was a human. No, how was this possible? Although there were some humans in the corpse general world who were kept in captivity for corpse general research, there were definitely no free humans. Chapter 539. It was not just the commandery princess. When the other corpse generals saw the human figure in the sky, an inexplicable panic rose in their hearts. How could a human who was supposed to be kept in captivity suddenly appear here? Moreover, this human had condensed energy wings behind his back and was floating in the sky. In the knowledge of these corpse generals, it seemed that only the corpse ancestor could float in the sky. Could it be that this human had strength comparable to the corpse ancestor? With this thought, all the corpse generals felt an inexplicable panic. They wanted to hide, they wanted to fight back. But they found that their bodies could not move at all. This made them even more terrified. Fortunately, the commandery princess found that she could occasionally open her mouth. Because the number of corpse generals was too large, reaching 400,000, and their strength was not low. They had reached the level of super-evolved corpse generals. Therefore, Emosher's dragons could not keep all the corpse generals motionless at all times. The commandery princess found that she could still open her mouth and shout. She seemed to be grasping at the last life-saving straw. She opened her mouth and let out a heart-wrenching cry like a pig being slaughtered. Quickly go and invite the corpse ancestor of the western heaven. This voice, accompanied by the transmission of energy, spread to a radius of hundreds of kilometers. Just as this voice fell, a figure suddenly appeared in the air 500 meters in front of Emosher without warning. This figure was not the size of a corpse general. It was the size of an ordinary human. It seemed that many creatures eventually developed a human form. After all, if the body was too big, it was inconvenient to do many things. This corpse general ancestor's head was completely bald. There was not a single hair on his head. His scalp was wrinkled. His face was wrinkled. His arms and bare feet were all wrinkled. In short, there was not a single part of his body that was not wrinkled. If someone with OCD saw this, they would probably want to flatten him with an electric iron. His gaze only swept across the miserable situation below. The next moment, his body began to change. With a series of muffled cracking sounds, the skin on his chest and back began to harden quickly. In the end, it became as hard as a rock. 2 bone blades grew out of his arms. These 2 bones extended from the outside of his arms with a certain curve. They were about 2 feet long. It was both offensive and defensive. Furthermore, those corpse ancestors had all changed their fighting style. It was no longer a long-distance energy competition. He no longer released any big moves. Instead, it leaned more towards close-range combat. However, this kind of close-range combat was fatal. It was far more dangerous than long-range combat. In a long-distance battle, the opponent's energy attacks were basically all AoE attacks. It looked very powerful, but the attack was scattered. If your body was tough enough, you might even be able to withstand it with your body. But in close combat, no matter how hard your body was, you would be killed almost instantly. When Wang Yi saw that corpse ancestor had come forward without saying a word, he was about to attack. It seemed like he was also a ruthless person. Emosure did not use the dragon salure again. The body of the dragon salure was relatively large, and it was more suitable for long-range attacks. With a thought, he took out a saber. The blade was 2 feet long. Its entire body was blood red. It was so red that it seemed like it could drip blood. From the tip of the blade to the hilt, it formed a small S-shaped streamline. The tip of the blade was extremely sharp. There was an S-shaped hollow line on the blade, which extended from the tip of the blade all the way to the hilt. On the back of the blade, there were more than 10 serrations. On the whole, it looked very scientific and mysterious. This was the profound Bing demon-slaying blade that Emosure had not used for a long time. The profound Bing demon-slaying blade and bloodthirsty corpse-slaying blade had some similar functions. They could both absorb the blood of infected creatures and transform it into a strong acid. However, there was an additional ice seal function. When it hit anything, it could instantly release a large amount of cold air. It would cause an ice seal effect. Even if it encountered a powerful creature, it could not be directly frozen, but it could also cause a slowing effect. This way, it would corrode from the inside and freeze from the outside. It made it impossible for the enemy to guard against it. Most importantly, the General Corpse's self-healing ability was extremely strong, but if it was cut by the profound Bing demon-slaying blade, it would definitely be very interesting. Moreover, this profound Bing demon-slaying blade had a growth attribute. It would absorb Emosure's evolution points and slowly grow. Emosure had not used it for a long time. It absorbed 100 evolution points every day to grow. The current profound Bing demon-slaying blade had already grown to an unknown extent. That corpse ancestor's figure flashed and already arrived in front of Emosure. With a thought from Emosure, Long Wei was instantly released. A trace of fear suddenly appeared in corpse ancestor's heart. Although his level was much higher than Emosure, Long Wei that Emosure had nurtured for many years would still cause a certain amount of disturbance to him. Emosure took advantage of this trace of fear in his heart and quickly slashed the profound Bing demon-slaying blade in his hand towards corpse ancestor. When corpse ancestor came back to his senses, the blood-red profound Bing demon-slaying blade was already above his head. He was alarmed and hurriedly teleported and disappeared. When he appeared again, he was already behind Emosure. However, Emosure had already predicted his position. He also teleported and disappeared without a trace. When corpse ancestor appeared, he discovered that Emosure had suddenly disappeared and could not help but be slightly stunned. Right at this moment, a blood-red blade had already pierced towards his back. Ding! A soft sound rang out. The tip of the blade pierced the hardened skin on corpse ancestor's back. However, it was unable to pierce in at all. Emosure was secretly alarmed. One must know that the profound Bing demon-slaying blade was extremely sharp and could cut through iron like mud. However, it was unable to pierce through corpse ancestor's hardened skin. This guy's defense was truly abnormal. However, it was fortunate that only the skin on his chest and back was hardened. Other than that, the rest of his skin was still normal. After corpse ancestor's body was pierced, he sneered. just as he was about to turn around and attack Emoshur. However, right at this moment, Kacha, the surface of his body was instantly covered with a thick layer of ice. This caused Corpse Ancestor's speed to slow down slightly. Emoshur took this opportunity and slashed towards the back of Corpse Ancestor's head. Although Corpse Ancestor did not manage to turn around, with his many years of battle experience, he instantly raised the bone blade on his right arm. Ding! Emoshur's profound Bing demon-slaying blade directly struck the bone blade. At the same time, Corpse Ancestor had already turned around and pierced towards Emoshur's chest with his other bone blade. However, right at this moment, he was once again sealed by a thick layer of ice. One must know that the profound Bing demon-slaying blade was extremely abnormal in one aspect. No matter what it struck, it would instantly release a large amount of cold air and freeze that object. Therefore, no matter if it was Corpse Ancestor's body or weapon, as long as it came into contact with the profound Bing demon-slaying blade, it would instantly be sealed by a thick layer of ice. With his strength, this 1-foot layer of ice could not completely freeze him and could only slow him down a little. However, in a battle between experts, as long as the speed was slowed down, it would be extremely dangerous. Chapter 540. Emoshur's Mystic Ice Devil-Slaying Blade was unable to penetrate the Western Heaven Corpse Ancestor's chest and back. The Western Heaven Corpse Ancestor's reaction was extremely fast, and he was always able to block Emoshur's attack with his bone blade. But there was one thing that annoyed the Western Heaven Corpse Ancestor. Every time Emoshur's Mystic Ice Devil-Slaying Blade attacked, as long as it touched his body or weapon, it would release a large amount of cold air, instantly forming more than a foot of ice around his body. Although with his strength, this kind of cold ice could not cause him any harm at all. But there was one thing: this cold ice would slightly slow his speed. Of course, an ordinary person would not be able to see any stagnation in his speed. However, when he was fighting against an expert like Emoshur, the slightest delay in his speed was enough to put him in a dangerous situation. His neck, eyes, crotch, and other vital points had been almost pierced by Emoshur's blade many times. Ding! The bone blade once again clashed with the Mystic Ice Devil-Slaying Blade. Crack! His whole body was once again sealed in ice. His energy shook slightly, shattering the ice seal. But at the same time, Emoshur's blade had once again arrived in front of his neck. The Corpse Ancestor was a little anxious. He wanted to escape, but there was no way to use teleportation. One must know that teleportation was not something that could be used immediately when one wanted to. Any skill in this world had a time before it could be used. The only difference was the length of the time before it could be used. Although the time before teleportation was very short, it was still there after all. Wang Yi did not give the Corpse Ancestor any chance to teleport at all. He could not fight, nor could he escape. How could this not make him anxious? Ding! Once again, Emoshur's Mystic Ice Devil-Slaying Blade clashed with the Corpse Ancestor's bone blade. Crack! The Corpse Ancestor was once again sealed in ice. The energy in his whole body shook, shattering the ice seal. Then he subconsciously protected his eyes with the blade in his left hand and his neck with the blade in his right hand. At the same time, he paid attention to his crotch to prevent Emoshur's sneak attack. But at this moment, Emoshur's Mystic Ice Devil-Slaying Blade did not attack his vital points. Instead, it slashed at the inside of the Corpse Ancestor's left leg from an extremely tricky angle. This had greatly exceeded Corpse Ancestor's expectations. He had been guarding his vitals all along, but who would have thought that this fellow would suddenly attack his thigh? Caught off guard, Emoshur's knife slashed the inside of his thigh. Chi! With a light sound, a bloody wound was finally made there. After training with the Corpse Ancestor, Emoshur had long since mastered a set of combat techniques. Perhaps he wasn't as strong as Corpse Ancestor in a face-to-face battle. But he was very scheming. Actually, as long as his profound Ice Devil-Slaying Blade was able to cut open the Corpse Ancestor's body, it would be able to cause enormous harm to him. However, Emoshur kept attacking his vital points, causing him to mistakenly think that the mysterious ice devil slaying blade was just an ordinary blade that had to hit his vital points to cause great damage to him. He had never expected that embark would slash at the inside of his thigh. However, Corpse Ancestor didn't panic. General Corpses had extremely powerful self-healing abilities, and as the Corpse Ancestor, his self-healing abilities were far superior to ordinary General Corpses. Therefore, even if his leg was scratched to the point where the bone was visible, it would heal in just 10 seconds. Crack! Just as he was thinking this, his entire body was sealed in ice again. Just like before, he shattered the layer of ice with a jolt of energy. Chi! Embark's knife cut his arm again. Crack! Frozen! Scratched. And so it went back and forth. In next to no time, besides his chest and back, practically every part of Corpse Ancestor's body was covered in injuries. And at this moment he finally discovered a horrifying fact. Those wounds hadn't healed. Not only had they not healed, but they seemed to be constantly corroding inside. Around the rotten wound, mucus bubbled like boiling water and flowed out continuously. At the same time, a burst of thick smoke rose, emitting an unpleasant stench. Half a minute later, his skin and flesh had been corroded through. The white bones inside were exposed. Soon, even the white bones had been corroded, turning into unpleasant mucus that fell to the ground. Corpse Ancestor of the Western Heaven watched helplessly as his left arm rapidly disappeared, and then his right arm disappeared. Thump! His left leg disappeared, and then his right leg disappeared. His entire body fell from the sky and fell to the ground. No, he let out the last and most tragic scream of his life. His head fell heavily to the ground. Finally, when more than half of his head had been corroded, his consciousness completely disappeared. In the end, his entire body, including that torso with a tortoise shell, had turned into black mucus. Corpse Ancestor was finally dead. The battle between embark and Corpse Ancestor looked very dangerous. But in reality, it had only lasted for a short 2 minutes. At this moment, embark looked at the corpse generals below. Those corpse generals were also looking at embark in the sky. Disbelief and terror appeared in their eyes. Corpse Ancestor is dead. He killed Corpse Ancestor. How could Corpse Ancestor die? No, impossible, absolutely impossible. In the culture of the corpse generals, as long as one cultivated to Corpse Ancestor's level, it was equivalent to possessing endless life. Moreover, Corpse Ancestor's self-healing ability was extremely strong, and he was basically unkillable. But now, Corpse Ancestor had died in front of them. This completely shattered their previous understanding. And the most shocking and unbelievable thing was that the one who killed Corpse Ancestor was a mere human. One had to know that humans were nothing more than ants to them. They were ants that could be casually stomped to death. But now, Corpse Ancestor of the Western Heaven had been killed by such an ant. This was simply unbelievable, and they did not dare to believe it, even though the truth was right in front of them. But the truth would not change with Corpse Ancestor's will. Just because you don't believe it, doesn't mean it didn't happen. Half an hour later, these 400,000 corpse generals were completely devoured by embark's subordinates. At the same time, the system's notifications sounded in his mind. Kill points have exceeded 10 trillion. You can advance. Advance now? Embark was overjoyed. He could finally advance again. He replied without hesitation. Advance. 5 minutes later, the system's notification sounded again. Advance successful. Name, embark. Level 7 Super Evolved Dragon. Level 7 Great Desolate Master. Level 10 Long Yenshur. Skills. Click to expand. Embark clenched his fists, feeling the surging energy in his body as if he had eaten a small blue pill. He had the urge to immediately find someone to fight. He had already advanced to level 7. Would level 8 be far away? The truth was, it was indeed very far away. Because advancing to level 8 required 100 trillion kill points. In other words, he had to kill 10 billion corpse generals before he could advance again. And in the largest corpse general city, there were only 10 million corpse general. There were only 4 such large cities in the corpse general world. The remaining cities had at most 1 million corpse general. How long would he have to kill? Sigh, the bitter days were about to begin again. Chapter 541. After advancing to the 7th rank, Emosher brought the corpse general ants and left Naten city. He continued to head to the next city. Currently, a town with 10,000 corpse general ants was no longer enough to satisfy his appetite. He needed a county like Naten city with a few 100,000 corpse general ants. Of course, there weren't many such counties. Emosher spent half a month and only massacred 20 such counties, obtaining 1,000 trillion kill points. He had only completed 1% of it. Of course, Emosher had originally planned to go to those super cities with tens of millions of corpse general ants. However, such super cities would definitely have extremely strong defenses. Moreover, there might be in existence even stronger than the corpse ancestor. With his current strength, he would still need some time to deal with the corpse ancestor without using the demon-suppressing orb. Moreover, he would need to deal with an existence even stronger than the corpse ancestor. Therefore, it was more practical to fight on the outskirts like this. Thus, one county after another was destroyed. Even a county with 1 million people was massacred. Emosher's army of corpse general ants continued to grow as the massacre continued. 1,000,000, 1,200,000, 1,500,000. The number of corpse general ants was rapidly approaching 2 million. There was a limit to the development of the corpse general ants, and that was that a group of corpse general ants could only have one ant queen. No matter how high the rank of an ant queen was, or how much food it had, it could only produce 10,000 corpse general ants per day. Therefore, the speed of development wasn't too exaggerated. Emosher had once tried to bring these corpse general ants into Earth space, instantly producing hundreds of millions of corpse general ants, and then bring them out of Earth space. However, just as he brought them out of Earth space, the corpse general ants that he created out of thin air in Earth's space instantly disappeared. This made Emosher feel somewhat helpless. What he did in Earth space wouldn't affect the real world. As for why he killed that huge dragon in Earth space, that huge dragon had died in the real world. In fact, it wasn't that the huge dragon had died in the real world, but that the huge dragon had been imprisoned in Earth space forever. If Emosher brought that huge dragon's corpse out of Earth space, that huge dragon would instantly come back to life. Unfortunately, this was impossible. Not to mention that the dragon's corpse had already exploded into fireworks. Even if it did exist, he couldn't bring it out of Earth space. As for the others, it was even more impossible. No matter how powerful a space creature was, it could only enter Earth space. It couldn't affect anything in Earth space. It was even more impossible to take the giant dragon away from Earth. Otherwise, the concept that Emosher was the god of Earth space would become a false proposition. While Emosher was leading his ant soldiers and ant generals to massacre those county cities, the news of this incident had already spread out. No matter how underdeveloped the communications of the general corpse world were, after such a long time, this news had already reached the ears of the various governors. These governors were much more rational than the princesses. They didn't think that a single city would be able to handle a guy who could slaughter so many prefectures and cities. Even if they had a few corpse ancestors in their prefecture city, they didn't think they could withstand it. Therefore, these governors all reported this matter to the king. Spartacus. This was the main city of the general corpse world. It was also the city where the zombie king resided. In the entire city, there were 33 million general corpses. Every general corpse was a super-evolved general corpse. The most powerful thing was that there were more than 100 corpse ancestors guarding Spartacus. One had to know that in the general corpse world, corpse ancestors were the ceiling of combat strength. One corpse ancestor was enough to make the general corpses worship him, not to mention that there were more than 100 of them here. The general corpse king was named Spartacus. That's right, this main city was named after him. In the general corpse world, The name of the main city would be changed the day the king took office. At this moment, in the palace of the main city. In the conference hall, there were as many as 30 governors standing in the center of the hall. On both sides of the hall, the General Corps civil officials and the General Corps warriors stood on the left and right. On the main seat of the hall sat the king of Spartacus. This king was still the wrinkled corpse ancestor. His grayish-white skin was covered with black bruise-like spots. He had a big bald head. In the eyes of humans, he looked ugly and funny. But in the eyes of the general corpses, the king of Spartacus was definitely a handsome man. He was worthy of being the most handsome man in the general corps world. In the general corps world, who knew how many female general corpses wanted to marry the king? But at this moment, this handsome man's expression was solemn as he listened to the reports of the governors below. Your Majesty, 30 cities in our stone state were massacred within a month. Your Majesty, 37 cities in our Balkan state were massacred within a month. Your Majesty, 42 cities in our Elko state were massacred within a month. But this is nothing. The main city of the neighboring state of Quinton was massacred. Spartacus listened to these reports and scratched his wrinkled but shiny head. This was a sign that he was about to explode. When the governors who knew his character well saw this, they all hurriedly stopped talking. None of the governors dared to make a sound. After Spartacus scratched his head for a moment, he was on the verge of exploding. But as a wise king, he didn't immediately explode. Instead, he looked at the civil and military officials on the left and right and asked, "Do you have any ideas?" The civil officials hurriedly lowered their heads. Facing such a ferocious guy, even the defense of their main city of Spartacus was probably not safe. What could they do? Although those generals didn't lower their heads. But they didn't say a word. They had participated in countless battles in their lives, and there were also countless battles when they invaded other planets. But they had never encountered such a strong enemy. He could easily slaughter a city. Even the corpse ancestor couldn't stop him. This was truly a little too strong. Spartacus scratched his wrinkled but shiny head. He said, "No one can do anything. What's the use of having you?" Although those civil and military officials were complaining in their hearts, "If you, the king, can't do anything, what's the use of having you, the king?" But they didn't dare to show it on the surface. After a full 5 minutes, a person said, "Your Majesty, do you still remember the Black Emperor?" When this general corpse said this, the other general corpses all sucked in a breath of cold air. "Black Emperor? Your Majesty, the Black Emperor must not be used. Your Majesty, the prophecy once said that the day the Black Emperor appeared was the day the world of corpses would be destroyed. You must not use the Black Emperor." Chapter 542. Hearing the two words Blood Emperor, the faces of all the ministers and officials changed. They were even more terrified than when they heard that hundreds of counties had been massacred. "Your Majesty, we can't let the Blood Emperor come out. According to the prophecy, if the Blood Emperor comes out, the general corpse world will fall into eternal damnation." The ministers all tried to persuade him. One of the generals shook his head. "That was in the past because we didn't have a way to deal with the Blood Emperor. But now, our general corpse world has been developing for more than 10,000 years and we have hundreds of ways to kill the Blood Emperor. After he exterminates those bandits, we can just kill the Blood Emperor. What is there to be eternal damnation about?" The ministers all shook their heads. "Your Majesty, we can't do that. 10,000 years ago, the Blood Emperor came out and massacred countless lives. At that time, the king paid a huge price to seal the Blood Emperor. If he comes out again, it will be hard to avoid another calamity. Your Majesty, although we have many ways to kill the Blood Emperor, it is only in theory and has never been tested. What if we can't kill the Blood Emperor? Although those bandits are despicable, the destruction they cause is far less than the Blood Emperor. Using the Blood Emperor to stop them is equivalent to exchanging a large injury for a small one. It is not worth it." On the main seat, the general corpse king Spartacus scratched his wrinkled but shiny head. He said, Then what methods do you have to stop those bandits? The ministers all shook their heads. They couldn't think of any other way to stop those bandits. Those bandits came and went without a trace. They couldn't even catch their shadows. Moreover, even if they could catch up with the bandits, how were they going to catch them? Those bandits were very powerful and could even massacre a city with a population of more than 1 million. Even if they sent an army of more than 1 million to deal with them, it wouldn't be effective. Not to mention, they didn't have that many soldiers now. The General Corpse King had already sent an army of more than 10 million to the flame-beginning continent. It was impossible to summon them back in a short time. Spartacus saw that all the ministers were silent. He pondered for a long time and his gaze became firm. He said, "Let the Blood Emperor fight. But before he fights, we can give him the corpse-dissolving powder. We can also prepare many defensive measures. If he dares to act recklessly, there are hundreds of ways to kill him." When the corpse generals heard this, they could only respond. The king is wise. They knew that once the king had made up his mind, it would be useless for them to persuade him otherwise. Moreover, it was very likely that he would be greeted with a sentence, "Drag him out and chop him up." That afternoon, Spartacus went to the mountain behind the palace alone, to the underground prison 5 kilometers deep. This prison was extremely large, and the security measures were extremely tight. Not only was there a spatial seal to prevent teleportation, but there was also no air hole. The prison was surrounded by thick layers of rocks. There was only one general corpse in the entire prison, the Blood Emperor. Spartacus came to the prison door and ordered the soldiers guarding the door to open the observation hole on the door. He glanced inside. Then he said to the soldier, "Open the prison door." The soldier was slightly hesitant. "Your Majesty, this is too dangerous for you. How about, cut the crap, open it?" The soldier hurriedly nodded and said, "Yes." Then he opened the heavy prison door. There were 3 prison doors. The first 2 were made of 3-meter-thick concrete and steel. The third was made of the hardest metal in the kingdom of general corpses, Eucal metal. The 3 large doors slowly opened, and King Spartacus entered the prison. This was a spherical prison with a diameter of over 10 meters. In this spherical prison, there were a total of 5 thick chains. These 5 chains chained the legs, hands, and neck of a humanoid creature. His head was facing down, his feet were facing up, and he was suspended in the air. Those chains that were as thick as a person's thigh were already covered in a thick layer of dust. Looking at this humanoid creature, he seemed to have once been a corpse ancestor. His wrinkled skin was proof of this. But at this moment, the clothes on the corpse ancestor's body had been reduced to tattered pieces of cloth. His exposed body looked as shriveled as a vacuum-packed chicken. The blood in his body seemed to have been sucked dry, leaving only a layer of wrinkled skin wrapped around his bones. His eyelids had sunk into his eye sockets. His body was also covered in a thick layer of dust. His nostrils had long been blocked by the dust. Spartacus's body slowly floated up, and he arrived in front of this wrinkled mummy. With a mysterious smile on his face, he moved closer to the mummy's ear and said, "It has been 10,000 years. The former Blood Emperor should have reappeared in the world." The mummy didn't have any reaction. Spartacus used his sharp fingertip to cut open his palm. He dripped a drop of black blood onto the mummy's body. A moment later, this drop of blood quickly merged with the mummy's body. Soon, the mummy's body started to squirm. Slowly, it turned from shriveled to full. About 2 minutes later, his body was completely full. He had already returned to the appearance of a normal corpse ancestor. But there was a hole in his throat. This hole seemed to have been made by a red-hot steel bar. And even with the Blood Emperor's self-healing ability, he was actually unable to heal that hole. His face didn't look like an ordinary corpse ancestor's. Instead, it seemed to be full of abscesses, and traces of yellow mucus were oozing out. It looked extremely disgusting. His eyes slowly opened, revealing his blood-red pupils. When he saw Spartacus, he revealed an extremely angry expression. From his throat that had a big hole, he let out a hoarse roar. Hiss, hiss, hiss. He continued to struggle, causing the chains to clatter. Spartacus faintly smiled and said, "I like to see this kind of expression on your face when you want to kill me but can't do anything about it. But this time, you have to listen to me." After he finished speaking, the angry expression in the Blood Emperor's eyes suddenly disappeared. Only a lifeless expression could be seen. Spartacus said, "Right now, there is a group of bandits causing chaos in my corpse ancestors' country. They have already massacred hundreds of cities. You have to find that group of bandits and kill them. Do you understand?" The lifeless expression in the Blood Emperor's eyes became sharp again. It was as if he had found his target in an instant. He nodded his head, and from his throat that had a big hole, he let out two sounds, hiss. When the corpse ancestor saw this scene, even though he was 300 meters tall, he still felt a chill in his heart. He had been guarding the Blood Emperor for more than 200 years. In front of him, the Blood Emperor was like a mummy. For the past 200 years, the Blood Emperor had never moved. He even felt that the Blood Emperor might have already died. But today, it was the first time he saw the Blood Emperor's true face. You're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.